The Vampire's Bride, a vampire werewolf paranormal romance audiobook. Prologue. Everyone always assumes that if a vampire and a werewolf can't fall in love, it is because we are natural enemies. Our two species being so different, there is some level of truth to this misconception. Vampires are cold, calculating predators skilled in the art of manipulation, which make our wolves wary. And we wolves are seen by them as unrefined creatures no better than wild animals. So you'd think our opposed nature was the root of the issue, and it's what I used to believe too. Except it isn't. There is a very real, though hardly ever told reason why a vampire and wolf can't be together, and it has nothing to do with misconceptions and stereotypes. This is the story of how I found out about the truth, much, much too late. 1. Present day. Towering arrangements of midnight blue and blood-red flowers line the pathway leading to the great doors of the mansion, their petals almost luminous under the moonlight that bathes the elegantly decorated garden. Long gown trailing behind me, I make my way to the entrance, keeping my head down as I try to ignore the vibrations of my phone, well hidden inside the small purse I've been allowed to bring along. It just won't stop buzzing, and I'd put it on silence except I worry about attracting attention. How dare a human look at her iPhone in a moment like this? Besides, I know exactly who's calling, and I can't even stand to look at his name on my screen. Not now. I try to pinpoint the scent I was specifically trained to find amongst the crowd. It's difficult, the smell of decay sticking to most vampires being pungent here in a crowd full of them. Though I cannot let my unease show. I cannot let anything show.
Why is this one not accompanied?
I hear a woman say before I see her pointing a well-manicured finger towards me with a perplexed frown. Well, there goes no attracting attention. I pick up my pace, glancing at my surroundings, hoping to spot a familiar face, but with no luck. I'm alone amongst predators, and they've unfortunately noticed. 2 vampire men dressed in impeccable suits are suddenly in my way, towering over me. It doesn't help that I'm particularly short, a fact no high heel was able to cover.
Where's your master, human?
One of the vampires asks, with a kind, attentive smile which doesn't match his cold, calculating stare. I bite my lip briefly before remembering that drawing blood is the last thing I need to be doing right now. Around here somewhere, I'm sure, I reply, with a polite incline of the head. I then proceed to move away, but my efforts are immediately thwarted.
Stay where you are.
Upon hearing the words, my movements immediately feel weighted, like my entire body has been draped in lead. Just my luck that I managed to attract the attention of a vampire skilled in the art of compulsion. Very few of them are anymore. And this one isn't the most skilled I've encountered, but he's not the worst, his command taking effect over me as I freeze in my tracks. It's what a regular human would have done. And I can't let anyone know I'm no regular human.
She isn't particularly pretty.
One of the vampires observes, critically.
No, she isn't.
His friend replies with a smirk.
She's probably not very important. I doubt anyone will miss her.
I gulp. They're not entirely wrong. And while I have no doubt I can get myself out of this mess safely, doing so without blowing my cover seems less likely. I am the worst double agent in existence. This is my first cover-up event, and I'm already seconds away from blowing it. A hand reaches towards me, and I'm debating what to do when a familiar voice cuts through the tension.
What do you think you're doing?
The tone is bored and indifferent, yet my attacker immediately freezes. Hand inches away from my face, and suddenly looking like he's inches away from death. Damian is moving towards our little group at an unhurried pace, his presence, all elegant grace and lethal smiles, as overwhelming as ever.
My prince.
One of them said, inclining his head.
Do you know this girl?
Damian's blue gaze descends upon me, making me gulp. For a moment there, it looks like he's going to deny it. But then...
I should hope so. She is my bride-to-be, after all.
My shoulders sag in relief before I remember I shouldn't have been able to move at all. Quickly catching on, Damian sends me a warning glance.
Your bride.
The vampire interrupts himself, sending his companion a wary look.
My apologies, my prince.
He says with yet another bow.
I wasn't aware you'd chosen a bride.
Damian doesn't gratify the man with an answer, making the vampire look like he's swallowed something particularly sour.
Please, feel free to move, my lady.
He tells me with a sheepish look, freeing me of his compulsion. Without taking his eyes off them, Damian takes my hand in his and leads me away from my aggressors with such poise you'd think nothing particular had just happened. But then, as we're about to enter the ball, he brings his lips to my ear.
Did one of them touch you?
His fingers clench around mine, betraying deceptively well-hidden anger. His face couldn't be more impassive, though. No, they didn't, I reply, confused.
Good.
My mind draws blank. Why is he asking me this? Why would he even care? It's not like we're actually together. I don't have time to think about it as we enter the ballroom under the appraising gaze of this country's entire vampire elite.
Try not to trip again.
Damian whispers, leading me down a flight of stairs. That happened just once, I grumble. Dressed in a silvery gown that cascades around my feet, intricate lace clinging to my arms and shoulders, I feel every bit the parody of the princesses from my childhood stories, as I'm abruptly pulled into the lap of my prince like I'm nothing more than cheap entertainment. The truth is, he is not my prince, but my master, and the vampire court gathered around us tonight, whose eyes have been following my every step since we arrived, have ensured I did not forget it. Disdain and mockery are evident across every single gaze I receive. Ice-cold fingers travel up my thigh, left bare beneath the daring slit of my gown, and a low, sultry voice whispers into my ear.
For crying out loud, Chloe, this is supposed to be sexy. Can you at least pretend like you're a little into it?
How do you even know how I look? You're sitting behind me, I counter, going for assertive but failing miserably.
I don't need to see you. You're as rigid as a statue.
Damian complains against my neck, like the petulant man-child he is.
You know, I'm beginning to think you don't find me attractive.
He isn't baring his fangs, yet his teeth graze my skin, and it takes all of my willpower not to squirm in discomfort as I attempt to focus on anything but his body pressed against mine. One would have to be blind not to find him attractive, and he very well knows it. Practically since we'd met, he'd started making a show of flirting with me, finding my embarrassment highly entertaining. My gaze travels around the mansion tonight's ball is being held in, reminiscent of a lavish court from a forgotten age. And amongst all this elegance and excess soars an infinite crowd of vampires, sipping blood politely from crystal cups, or in some cases, the throats of the living. A shiver ran down my spine as I imagined myself in their place. This could be me soon. Everyone here expects it after all.
Relax.
Damian brings the inside of my wrist to his lips for a kiss.
I promised I wouldn't bite, didn't I?
I gulp. He did promise, but
Chloe,
Damian's arms tighten around me.
people are watching and you being close to tears is suspicious.
I bite my lip, feeling even more nervous at the words. I know everyone accepts a certain behavior from me, namely fangirl-level gratefulness at being allowed to sit on the great Damian Cromwell's knees. But it's hard to pull off when I feel nothing of the sort. Sorry, I mumble. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Damian scratches his throat expectantly, making me frown. Oh, right. I didn't mean to embarrass you, Master. I correct myself. I don't think I've managed to make the title sound as adoring as I should, but at least it wasn't laced with the disgust I feel.
Good girl.
Damian grins, giving my upper thigh a firm squeeze. It takes all of my willpower not to yelp. If someone had told me, only a few days ago, that I, Chloe, would become a vampire's bride, I wouldn't have believed them. To the calculating predator devoid of emotions that is a vampire, nothing is more prey than his chosen bride. Paraded around by their master vampires as glorified living blood bags, Brides are there for their masters to feed upon in exchange for formidable wealth and status. Don't get me wrong, I hate the concept, and I'd never thought I'd end up on a vampire's arm, serving as his bride. I was raised to fear this world with good reason. I am a werewolf, something no one at this horrifying pretense of a party can ever find out.
Come.
Damian says, abruptly pulling me after him, his presence parting the crowd like a dark ship cleaving through a sea of bodies.
We're going to dance.
His long fingers are cold against my back, though not as cold as his icy blue gaze. The music swells, and I put a hand on his shoulder like we practiced, following the steps I've only recently been taught. Eyes are on us, some envious, some calculating, and others pitying as we execute this mockery of intimacy. I think we should rather keep a low profile. I object as he dips me towards the ground. We're too exposed, everyone is staring. Damian flashes me a brilliant smile.
Comes with the job.
I sigh. Damian might be used to the spotlight, but I'm not liking it one bit. For under the brilliant lights and amidst the swirling gowns, the monsters at this party wear no masks. How did I end up here? One might ask. Only a few days ago, I was still patrolling the streets of my town fighting vampires. And now, I was dancing the night away in a ballroom full of them. 10 days ago.
You're late.
Vivian tells me instead of a greeting, when I find her in a dark street corner, half an hour past our rendezvous point. Her red hair is tied back into a severe-looking ponytail, and her dark sports clothes couldn't be more casual yet. She somehow still manages to look like a supermodel. However, her good looks have nothing to do with her being the beta of my pack. She's one of the strongest and most cunning wolves I know. Sorry. I mumble, looking for an excuse because the truth just won't cut it.
I thought you were gonna pull a Jake.
She sighs, heading for a crossroads at a hurried pace. I trail after her, trying to figure out what she means by that, but mostly relieved about not having to justify my delay. I'm not good at lying. You mean you were afraid I wasn't going to show? Vivian smirks.
No, I thought you'd just be hours late, drunk and accompanied by a hooker.
I bite my lip, weighing my words. I know Jake isn't the most reliable member of our pack, but I doubt he'd ever do that to Vivian, and not just because she's our leader's second in command either. Still, I'm sure you'd feel better if he were here instead of me. I mumble, apologetically. Vivian tenses as we turn a dark corner.
I'd feel better if Harry was feeling better.
She grumbles, avoiding giving me an answer.
That mating bond of his has been a real nightmare.
Vivian has had to handle most, if not all, of Harry's alpha duties ever since he's been mated, which hasn't been easy for her. Being an alpha gives a wolf almost limitless authority over others, a tactical advantage Vivian hasn't benefited from by proxy ever since our leader's been down for the count. Though that's hardly Harry's fault. He needs some time to recover, I argue. When he broke his bond, it almost killed him. Mating bonds are sacred to us wolves, and once one is formed, it's extremely rare to see it being broken, as we rarely survive the separation. It's true for regular mating bonds, and even more so for fated bonds, like the one between my alpha and his mate, Emma.
Yes, well, you broke your bond with your fated mate, and I don't see you on the brink of death.
Vivian puts a hand on my shoulder, giving me an affectionate look.
I'm proud of you, you know? You've been incredibly strong.
Guilt twists my heart, and shame finishes what's left of it. If only she knew. If I'm doing so well, it's only because my mating bond is far from broken, like she and everybody else in my pack believe it to be. How could they begin to suspect I'm still very much bonded to the most hated rogue wolf in the region? If my alpha doesn't kill me upon finding out I'm still with Nate, my pack's disappointment will. I'm about to reply when a muffled scream pierces the air. Around us, passers-by don't react, but that's because they're humans who do not have enhanced hearing. What was that? I ask Vivian.
It came from behind us.
She says, glancing over her shoulder. Shouldn't we turn? I ask, feeling my wolf itching to claw its way out like it usually does in a dangerous situation.
Not now. We'd only attract attention.
Vivian's expression is calm and collected, her movement quick and efficient.
Could be just a basic aggression.
It was a woman's cry, I remind her. We're still helping, right?
Might as well.
As we erupt into the back alley of a club, more muffled sounds echo into our ears, growing closer. There, I exclaim, pointing towards two figures hidden behind a fire escape. A woman is being pinned to a wall by a clouded figure, who quickly reveals itself as a vampire when it turns around, baring its fangs. I wince, my fears coming alive in front of my very eyes. So the rumors are true then. Vampires have begun attacking humans again.
Step away from the girl.
Vivian snaps warningly.
Or what?
The vampire asks. I'm not very used to seeing vampires, although he's not the first one I've ever encountered. Like all others of his kind, there's a hypnotic tint to his voice which sounds pleasant, despite the threat the creature poses. His features are twisted in an unnatural snarl, but I bet he'd look gorgeous if he schooled his expression. All vampires are attractive. It helps them lure in their prey. However, there are thick, cloying notes of decay tinting his scent. Vampires may be beautiful, but to our wolves, they smell of death. Kind of ruins the appeal. The blonde woman being pinned down is trying to speak, but her words are muffled by her captor's hand, though we quickly guess what she was trying to say when a second vampire emerges from the shadow, with all the eerie grace of a big jungle cat.
They're wolves.
The newcomer says, wrinkling his nose.
Smells like wet dog for miles.
You're breaking the accords attacking a human.
Vivian reminds.
Let her go.
Fuck the accords.
The one holding the woman growls.
We didn't make the rules and we're done following them.
Vivian and I exchange a wary look. This isn't good. The accords, which have been signed a century ago, is essentially a peace treaty binding vampires and werewolves to two major rules. Don't attack humans, and
Don't make me come here and bite you.
Vivian warns, giving the vampire a hardened stare. A werewolf bite induces a transformation into one of our kind. Except, very few are those who can survive the turn, and no vampires ever have. Essentially, we bite them, we kill them, which is why the accords forbid it.
You wouldn't dare.
The vampire replies, baring his sharpened teeth, making Vivian smirk disdainfully. A bite from a vampire wouldn't kill us, though it only seems fair that if we can't do it, neither can they. The vampire who'd been holding the woman hostage drops her to the ground and runs towards Vivian in a poor semblance of an attack she takes a mere second to parry. Vampires are quicker than us, but they aren't as strong. They rarely have the upper hand in hand-to-hand combat, especially when faced with a skilled fighter like Vivian. The same can't be said about me. When the second vampire comes at me, I barely manage to avoid his arm and dodge to the side, losing my balance in the process. My attacker seizes the opportunity and pounces, pinning my arms to the ground. His fangs are inches from my face. I retaliate by headbutting the vampire's nose, making him screech and loosen his hold. My arms freed, I quickly grab my attacker by the throat with one hand, ready to punch with the other. But then, Evie's face flashes before my eyes, twisted in fear and covered in blood. I choke, frozen in place.
Chloe!
I hear Vivian scream, but it sounds far away. I can't move. The vampire is pinning me back down again. I let him, feeling all the air has left my lungs. His body is suddenly lifted off me, and I expect to see Vivian's face above mine. But it's my attacker's vampire friend who's come to my rescue.
Feeding discreetly's one thing, but if we get caught, we're done for.
He says.
This isn't worth it. Let's get out of here.
Why would we get caught?
My attacker frowns.
Because there are two wolves here, and at least one of them looks competent enough to live to tell the tale.
The vampire replies, pointing towards Vivian, who's crossing her arms and clenching her jaw. Reluctantly, his companion moves away, giving my beta a wary glance.
Whatever. The king will soon be dethroned.
He warns, walking past us.
We'll have our fun, dogs.
Vivian barely raises an eyebrow at his words, watching them leave while I hurry to the blonde woman's side. Are you okay? I ask her, helping her to her feet. I'm trying to think of some excuse to explain away all she has just heard. It's best humans don't know about the supernatural world.
I'm fine.
The blonde replies, scrubbing her clothes.
Are you?
She indeed looks and sounds fine, if a little miffed. You'd think she didn't almost get bitten by a vampire.
Chloe,
Vivian joins us, putting a hand on my shoulder.
what happened back there?
I stubbornly avoid the pitying look I know she must be giving me, one I'm used to receiving but still cannot stand. I don't deserve her pity, not after what I did to Evie, not after what I'm still doing with Nate. My eyes meet the blonde's clear blue ones, and my wolf immediately tenses. This woman we just rescued is no ordinary human, I can tell. She's not a vampire, and she isn't a wolf. But a dangerous aura emanates from her nonetheless.
You're a witch.
Vivian guesses, assessing the woman much more quickly than I have. The stranger nods.
Thank you for your help. I am now in your debt.
She doesn't sound very pleased, though. It's making me uneasy, and I give her a tentative smile. Don't worry about it. You don't owe us anything, really. The witch sends me a thundering look.
That's not how it works. I collect debts, not the other way around. My higher-ups will not be pleased.
She says, glancing at her feet. Why are you looking down? I ask, confused.
Because that's where they are.
The witch replies lightly, before settling her calculated gaze onto me.
You'll both get a wish, free of charge.
Vivian and I exchange a confused glance.
Wait, are you that witch who lives in town? The one that grants favors?
I grant favors for a price.
The witch replies, staring at her nails with a frown.
And trust me, they never come cheap. Although I leave it up to the customers to decide whether the price is worth it or not.
Vivian scolds.
Please, I bet you avoid reading them the fine print.
If that's what you choose to believe, suit yourself.
The witch shrugs.
Your wish will come for free. No fine print, no price, no consequence. Anything you want.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. Anything we want? Except killing people or forcing them to fall in love, surely, I ask with a frown. The witch looks confused.
No, I can do that too. Why? Would you like someone dead?
She asks me. I shake my head, heart beating at the idea of having that kind of power.
We're not interested, thank you.
Vivian says, grabbing my hand.
Come on, Chloe.
Are you not?
The witch crosses her arms.
I can read auras, you know. Yours screams unrequited love.
Vivian's face becomes as red as I've ever seen it, leaving me speechless. She's usually not one to show much emotion, so seeing her so flustered feels even more surprising than having a witch offering us our dreams on a silver platter.
We're going now.
Vivian stammers nervously.
Thank you, but no thank you.
She pulls on my hand and drags me behind her, while I take one last glance at the witch.
I'll be seeing you soon.
She says like there's no doubt about it. And she ends up being right. Because I was about to make my wish that very night, changing my life for the worse. For making the wish was what would lead me straight to the nest of vipers that was the vampire court. 3. Present day, at the ball. My dance with Damian ends abruptly, my head spinning from all the swirling steps I had to execute, but also from the stress of having to monitor the entire ballroom for any threats while doing so. And Damian wasn't any help either, criticizing my every step in between shameless flirting attempts I had a hard time pretending didn't work on me. He's supposed to be my one ally here in this strange, dangerous world, and yet he couldn't be less reliable, due to his innate incapability to take anything seriously. To Damian, life is one long, seamless joke. And the fact that someone's very intent on ending his early doesn't faze him in the slightest. He just can't seem to comprehend the notion of danger. I've heard that the more time passes, the less vampires have the ability to feel emotions. Well, Damian clearly lost all ability to feel fear.
This guy's facial hair looks suspicious.
Damian mock whispers, pointing to a nearby vampire's mustache.
Do you think he's the killer?
All ability to feel fear, and any form of intelligent thought. If I wasn't so desperate, I would have fled the vampires a long time ago like my wolf keeps urging me to do. But ever since making my wish, I've been, in fact, particularly desperate. And hiding amongst the vampires is the best solution I can think of to escape the predicament I'm in.
Well, I've done my fair share of parading you around.
Damian says, letting go of my hand.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go get ridiculously drunk.
I grab onto his arms and trail after him, only slightly tripping along the way. He's ridiculously tall, and I've often been compared to a dwarf. Granted, mostly by Damian. Still, he has a point. I thought vampires couldn't get drunk, I mumble, trying to keep up with his hurried step.
Don't remind me.
Damian sighs dramatically.
I still intend to try. Feel free to join me. Who knows, you might actually end up having fun.
He pretends to gasp while shaking me off his arm, though I grip at the limb as tight as I can.
You having fun? Can you imagine? 'Cause I really can't.
Stop it, I grumble as he tries to move away. I have to stay by your side. Damian scratches his throat again, giving me a pointed look. I sigh in resolve. I have to stay by your side, Master. Damian beams at me. It'll be safer, I conclude, slightly distracted by his bright grin.
Safer for who?
Damian rolls his eyes, snatching a glass of blood from a passing waiter and bringing it to his lips.
You're so twitchy, one would think you're the one needing my protection.
I grimace, trying to shush him into being more discreet. I get that he's not very confident in my abilities as a bodyguard, understandable given that he doesn't know I'm a wolf. Still, he agreed to this arrangement, so he could be putting a little more effort into the charade. If he didn't want me around, he should have said so when we'd signed the contract with his grandfather present. I regret not seeing Ian Cromwell at tonight's reception. He, at least, seemed to somewhat believe in me.
Blondie,
Damian points to my forehead.
with all this frowning you do, you're going to be prematurely wrinkled and nobody wants that.
Damian.
A painfully beautiful young woman with long, raven hair and clear blue eyes approach us, her walk reminding me of an elegant panther, graceful in its lethality. I've never met her before, and I'm struck silent by her flawless beauty, only accentuated by the splendor of her shimmering dress. She puts a hand on Damian's shoulders and places a delicate kiss on his cheek. They seem well acquainted, despite Damian's obvious displeasure at her arrival. Could she be an ex-girlfriend? She looks only slightly younger than him, in her mid-20s like I am.
Chloe.
Damian smiles so brightly it looks forced.
Meet Alexandra, my mother.
I do my best to execute the customary curtsy I was taught only a day prior, while hiding my astonishment. This young girl is Damian's mother? I best remember not to assume anything about age when meeting a vampire. It's impossible to know how old they are. Damian may look like he's in his early 30s, but maybe he's 10 times that age? Alexandra briefly glances at me, though she doesn't bother with any form of greeting and goes back to addressing her son.
Your bride.
She asks, with the barest of frowns, although her words are laced with disdain.
My love, you really should have let me pick one for you. I had plenty of perfectly suitable candidates lined up, and you had to go and pick that.
I school my features into a neutral expression, as I'm not allowed to react to anything a vampire throws at me. It's against the rules. And, ever since becoming Damian's bride, or bride-to-be since the ceremony has yet to take place, the rules have been drilled into my brain by the forceful, ever-efficient staff of the Cromwell family estate. However, none of them has been as strict and insistent as Ms. Jones, the head intendant. Shortly after having been hired by his grandfather, and meeting Damian, I had been taken to my own penthouse suite within the luxurious hotel they were staying in, an insane labyrinth of rooms all more breathtaking than the next. But I barely had time to appreciate any of it, as I was almost immediately joined by an entire staff of people, exclusively human and tasked with preparing me to befit my future husband.
Do not ever call him that.
Ms. Jones had snapped with a sour expression.
Should the bridal ceremony take place, which I can almost guarantee won't happen, as I'm certain the young master will have regained his senses before then, you'll do well to remember you are not his equal. Your role will be to serve him.
I had nodded, trying my best to take everything in while being groomed from head to toe, one man attending to my light blonde hair, which he claimed was too short, while a young woman hurriedly stuck extensions onto my eyelids.
Darling, your nails.
A third party had groaned.
How dare you walk around with nails like these?
I was never expressly told what was wrong with my nails because there'd been too much to do. I was, according to all those experts on good looks, a shipwreck.
We have 2 days to teach you some basics before your first outing with Master Damian.
Ms. Jones had explained as she tried to get me to fix my posture, an impossibly difficult task if she was to be believed.
Should he keep you around after the ball, which he won't, we'll meet together every day to pursue your training. We can't let just anybody attend to the young master's needs, can we? So should he keep you around—
Which he won't, I had surmised.
Indeed, you'll be given proper etiquette training. How to walk, talk, dress, converse amongst the vampire elite.
There's an elite? I'd asked, curious. Ms. Jones had given me the most disdainful glance I'd ever seen.
The Cromwells are the elite, young lady, and I'll be damned if you aren't taught well enough to treat them according to their rank.
A part of me still found all this extravagance slightly ridiculous. Amongst wolves, there wasn't really any notion of class. Though, I suppose that wasn't entirely accurate. We did have a hierarchy, more or less strict, depending on the pack. But my alpha, Harry, isn't particularly bossy, or at least not with me, despite him being quite influential amongst our entire community. I just tend to forget because he's like an older brother to me, and so there isn't need for any decorum around him. Meanwhile, vampires, it seems, have an intricate class system and interact much more with humans than we wolves do, essentially considering them as slaves. To say this doesn't make me very comfortable would be an understatement. But right now, there wasn't much I could do or say. I'd made my bed, so to speak. If I was going to survive the inextricable mess I'd gotten myself into and hide amongst the vampires, I was to do it acting as Damian's bride, while secretly trying to prevent whoever was after him from killing him. Somehow. God, if I hadn't been doomed before, I was certainly doomed now. There was no way I, the most desperately disappointing Omega Wolf of the region, could save a vampire from a danger even his grandfather, one of the eldest and most powerful vampire alive, could make sense of. 1 week ago, the day I met Ian Cromwell.
I'll be leading the negotiations.
Vivian reminds me as she drives us across a large, crowded boulevard. I nod, expecting nothing else. I'm still stunned she accepted to take me along to meet with a vampire king, though desperate times call for desperate measures, I supposed. Vivian couldn't deny Ian Cromwell his audience, and it wasn't safe for her to go alone. But with our alpha unable to attend and Vivian's usual backup missing for the count, I'd been assigned the job instead. The city, with its ceaseless motion and cacophony, is a stark contrast to the quiet, orderly life I'm accustomed to in our small town of Grimswood. Unfazed by the sheer volume of people and the endless streams of cars, Vivian's bright green eyes are sharp and focused. I, on the other hand, find my senses bombarded at every turn, though I'd never had as much control over my wolf as Vivian. She's the very definition of control. Our destination is an opulent hotel nestled among the city's skyscrapers like a grand old monarch. It is here, in a suite that probably cost more per night than my entire monthly expenses, that we are to meet the Vampire King. I stare, dumbfounded at the luxury that envelops us. It's not like our pack isn't well off, but the hotel lobby here is something else, a vast expanse of marble and gold, with chandeliers that sparkle like stars captured within glass. Cromwell's staff greets us with a politeness that borders on reverence, guiding us through the corridors with the ease of those accustomed to catering to the whims of the powerful. The suite, when we finally arrive, is nothing short of astonishing, with a panoramic view of the city, now alight with the vibrant colors of night. I wondered, as we waited for Ian Cromwell to make his appearance, what sort of man thrived in such a place.
It's nighttime. He should be there soon.
Vivienne grumbles through her teeth. She's trying not to show it, but I know she's nervous. This meeting has to go well. We just can't stop every new vampire attack from happening. It isn't sustainable. We need a vampire king to rein in his people like he's supposed to.
Good evening, ladies.
I can tell the vampires we'd rescued the witch from a few days ago weren't near the same caliber as Ian Cromwell when the man finally decides to make his grand entrance. He's a classically handsome man in his mid-50s, with marble-like features and a bright smile that doesn't have an ounce of warmth. He's fascinating to look at, graceful in his movements in a way that's almost predatory. It's hard to look away from him. There's something hypnotic about the way he moves. Fascinating and yet terrifying. A shiver runs down my spine, my wolf telling me to run. His scent is enticingly sweet and pleasant, almost sickeningly so. There's something nauseating underneath it, though. The smells of death and decay.
Vivian Woods,
he says, giving her an appraising look.
You're even more beautiful than I remember.
Vivian inclines her head politely.
And who's this?
Ian adds, turning towards me.
I was expecting your infamous Alpha to come along instead.
Harry's indisposed.
Vivian says tightly.
He's been recently mated.
Really?
Cromwell gestures for a staff member to bring him something, dark red liquid I realize is blood as he pulls it towards his lips.
I wasn't aware these mating bonds of yours were such an impairment, at least not for an Alpha as renowned as yours.
He says this lightly, pleasantly, but with an hardened edge to his words that can't be mistaken for anything other than a threat. His bond is a fated bond, I explain, feeling defensive. Not only do I not appreciate anyone belittling my Alpha, I myself am part of a fated pair, something few other wolves can really understand, it being so rare and all. It's no excuse for forgiving Nate over and over again after all he has done. But...
A fated pair?
Cromwell's eyes glisten in interest.
Sounds fascinating. I would love to meet your great Alpha's little mate. Tell him to bring her to me next time, won't you?
I'm sure Vivian would like nothing more than to tell him off, but she nods evasively instead. Probably wise not to tell an important vampire our Alpha would rather die than let his mate near him.
Why did you want to meet with us, Mr. Cromwell?
She asks politely.
Straight to the point, aren't we? I like that.
Cromwell pauses, to drink another sip of the blood, before going forward in a neutral tone.
I would like to strengthen my relations with your kind. I'm aware some of the vampires in the area haven't been particularly well-behaved as of late.
That's a rather subdued way of putting it. Cromwell hasn't done a thing about the increase of vampire attacks these past couple months, and the entire werewolf community is pissed. Tensions are escalating, and he very well knows it.
You might say that.
Vivian replies neutrally. Cromwell smirks.
I could ensure they're kept in line. In fact, I'd love nothing more than to do so. You know I'm rather good at that sort of thing.
Vivian nods carefully. He is, or rather, he was. Which brings the question, what changed?
It's just, you see, I've been rather busy as of late.
Cromwell says, airily looking at his nails.
With rather pressing family matters.
Vivian looks only very slightly surprised.
I wasn't aware you had a family.
She comments pleasantly, though I'm sure she feels nothing remotely pleasant at the prospect.
I have a daughter, the apple of my eye.
Cromwell replies with so little emotion, I briefly wonder if he's being sarcastic.
And she herself has a son. He's very recently been turned, and he's a little mercurial, you see.
I wonder what he means by mercurial.
Is your grandson the one behind all the attacks?
Vivian asks, coldly. Cromwell laughs.
Oh, dear, no. Damian isn't like that. He is a Cromwell, after all, and my heir. He's perfectly civilized. But for some reason I cannot begin to fathom, seeing as he is such a delight.
Cromwell scratches his throat before pursuing.
Someone seems dead set on having him killed.
Vivian frowns, looking confused.
Someone's trying to kill your grandson?
She repeats, processing the words.
And you have no idea who it could be?
None.
Cromwell confesses with a pained wince.
In fact, I can't be certain if the culprit would be satisfied with his demise or if it's our entire family he or she is after. Which is why we elected to hire extra security.
I don't see how this concerns...
Vivian's eyes widen in understanding.
You'd like someone from our pack to become your grandson's... bodyguard?
Precisely.
Cromwell exclaims, grinning like a cat.
We tend to hire specialized humans for the job or sometimes other vampires. But Damian's been attacked twice now, and his mother is becoming somewhat paranoid. Her theory is that the job could have been ordered by someone from the inside, which is why a neutral party, someone who isn't usually part of our world, but with the physical enhanced capabilities for such a task, seems ideal to me.
Vivian and I exchange a look. I can't tell what she's thinking.
To be completely honest, you're the one I had in mind for the job.
Cromwell tells Vivian.
I know you're an influential member of your pack, and rumors of your great beauty have not been exaggerated.
Vivian grinds her teeth.
I'm flattered, but there's no way I can leave my alpha's side right now.
She replies honestly.
That's a shame.
Cromwell takes another drink.
To be completely honest with you, I think this assignment could be beneficial to both our people. I've got a hunch that the ones responsible for attacking my family could be the same people encouraging vampire to go after humans.
You have a hunch?
Vivian challenges with a dubious expression.
Yes, as you know, my family has tremendous influence over this country's various vampire clans. We've always played a major role in ensuring peace is kept with the humans and the wolves.
Vivian nods, conceding to the fact.
My belief is that someone is challenging our authority, going after us, and weakening our influence by encouraging rogue vampires to misbehave, putting us on the spot. I'd like the wolf looking after Damian to not only keep him safe, but to help me investigate on who could be encouraging these attacks.
I think back on the vampires Vivian and I had stopped only a night prior. One of them had claimed that their king would soon be dethroned. Upon hearing Cromwell's input, it now seems likely it was him they'd been referring to.
I will speak with my alpha about finding you the right candidate,
Vivian says, inclining her head.
I can already think of a couple name that seems right for...
What about you, pet?
Cromwell interrupts, eyes snapping to me. I blink in stupor. Is he really talking to me? Me, the weakest wolf in our pack?
Not her.
Vivian interrupts, giving me a look.
Chloe's not...
She seems perfect to me,
Cromwell says.
She's a wolf, she's part of your pack, and you brought her here, so I know she must be competent.
Vivian is trying to maintain her composure, but I can tell it's difficult.
Chloe's very young.
She tries.
And besides...
Ah.
Cromwell interrupts, never taking his eyes off me.
She must be mated.
Vivian's face gives her away. I am mated, but she doesn't think I am, and it shows. And I'm not about to tell her otherwise. Neither she or anyone in our pack can find out I'm still mated to Nate. I gulp, just thinking of what would happen if any of them, especially my alpha, was to find out. Betraying him like that, after everything he's done for me.
She isn't mated?
Cromwell clasps his hands.
Well, that settles it then. You're hired.
He tells me confidently. I don't know what to say. On the one hand, I'm not remotely competent enough for the job. As Cromwell said, he'd want someone like Vivian, one of the most powerful werewolf in our pack, if not the country. And it's clear she doesn't want me to accept, as it would surely reflect poorly on all of us if I were to fail. But on the other hand, this could be my chance. If I worked for the vampires undercover, Nate would be unable to approach me without creating a huge diplomatic incident. This would buy me some time to figure out the terrible truth I'd learned after making my wish to the witch.
This is a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Cromwell teases.
I won't offer again.
Thank you,
Vivian says, getting up.
I will find you a suitable candidate and get back to you. Let's go, Chloe.
But I ignore her. Cromwell says he won't make the offer again, and I can tell he's being serious. There are plenty of other shifters around he could ask. Except, it has to be me. What I discovered upon making my wish, I can't let it happen.
Chloe.
Vivian insists.
Get up, let's go.
I'm in trouble, and need to stay away from my mate. And I can't ask my pack for help, not without telling them how I'd betrayed them, not without dragging any of them down with me. I see no escape. None, apart, perhaps, from the one Cromwell is unknowingly offering me. You're really offering me the job? I ask Cromwell, in a small voice. He smiles at me in a way I try to convince myself is kind.
Of course I am.
He takes my hand in his. It's icily cold.
In fact, I feel better already, knowing you'll be looking after my daughter's pride and joy.
You said he was recently turned and mercurial. We all know that's code for dangerous and unable to refrain his urges.
Vivian shouts, affronted, but Cromwell ignores her.
What do you say, pet?
He asks me with a sardonic smile. I feel cold, but not as cold as I did, only 3 days ago, after making my wish. Being a vampire's bodyguard can't be worse than the consequences awaiting me. I accept, I declare, squeezing Cromwell's icy hand. His smile spreads wide. 5, present time, at the vampire ball.
Well, thank you, Mother, for this warm and loving conversation.
Damian says with mock enthusiasm.
But my darling Chloe and I must retire for the evening.
He grabs onto my wrist, clearly aiming to drag me away, but his mother blocks him in his path.
Don't call her by her name, Damian.
She snaps, showing a hint of emotion for the first time in the evening.
Somebody might hear.
So what?
Her son replies, lightly, though tightening his hold over my wrist to the point of pain. I don't think he's doing it intentionally, but I've learned not to assume anything with him.
Vampires don't refer to their property by name.
His mother flashes him a cold smile.
You'd do well to remember it. Now's not the time to be showing weakness.
Lowering my eyes as I must under these circumstances, I try to gauge whether or not Damian's mother is telling him this out of the goodness of her heart or because she's simply obsessed with their family image.
Careful, Mother.
Damian laughs.
Someone might think that you care.
Of course I care.
Alexandra snaps, before frowning at her own outbursts.
Yes, you and your impeccable mother's instincts.
Damian turns to me.
Chloe, did your parents let you do drugs? 'Cause my mom introduced me to coke when I was 12. Isn't she the best?
He adds, smiling broadly at his mother. Alexandra bends towards him to whisper her next words into his ear. She probably thinks I can't hear them. A human wouldn't after all. But I'm not human, and my hearing is excellent.
Behave, or I'm revoking your visiting rights.
She grazes his cheek with a finger.
I'm only saying this because I love you, darling.
An image of Nate flashed in my mind upon hearing her last words. He, too, tends to follow his warnings with a declaration of love, and the realization makes me grind my teeth. Shall we? I blurt out without thinking, pulling decidedly on Damian's arm. We wolves, our protective is the thing. And I am, after all, meant to protect Damian. Though his mother doesn't know that. And being subjected to her cold, angry gaze, I realize my little display hasn't been well received.
How dare you?
Alexandra mutters, briefly glancing around us to make sure no one heard me speak without being addressed. I shouldn't have done that, I realize. Really, that was very foolish of me. To everyone here, I must act and look like Damian's plaything. Asking him to do anything was a major faux pas.
You've read my mind.
Damian says, with a tight smile that seems to indicate I'd be paying for that later. He attempts to drag us away again, but his mother puts a hand on his chest, stopping him.
Darling,
she says, sounding exaggeratedly sweet.
Now that you've finally chosen a bride for yourself, how about you give everyone here a little demonstration?
I frown, confused. A little demonstration? What does she mean by that? Around us, a couple of vampires turn towards our trio with barely disguised interest, having heard Alexandra's intentionally loud comment. Damian briefly clenches his jaw.
I've already drunk from her earlier this evening, Mother.
He replies, in a disinterested tone.
I don't think my lowly unbecoming plaything you so loathe, is ready to go again.
Realizing what Alexandra is suggesting, my entire body goes rigid. She wants Damian to drink from me? Here? In front of this entire crowd of vampires? Though I suppose it is what everyone believes me to be here for. And I've seen it happen a couple of times this evening already. Most vampires don't bother hiding when they drink from their slaves.
You don't look like you've had any blood recently.
Alexandra objects, with a tight smile.
You're so pale, my love. You need to feed.
I send Damian a brief, panicked stare he ignores, and I feel my heart plummet. This can't be happening. Ian Cromwell swore to me this wouldn't happen. 6. 1 week ago, shortly after meeting Ian Cromwell, the Vampire King's car pulls up in front of a small manor, built onto large grounds at the very center of the city. It's like a small oasis amongst the desert of concrete. My wolf is slightly appeased by the more quiet and natural haven, though not by much. It knows we're essentially walking right into the lion's den, so to speak.
Remember,
Cromwell tells me before we exit the vehicle.
no one can know of your true nature, not even Damian.
I give him a pointed look. Even if I did want to tell Damian or any other vampire for that matter, Cromwell had well ensured I couldn't.
It would make us look weak and vulnerable if other vampire clans were to find out we, the supposedly most powerful family on the continent, had to resolve to asking werewolves for help.
He'd explained earlier while we were still driving, my mind reeling from the decision I'd made to accept his offer to become a bodyguard.
You understand we're in a precarious situation here, hence the drastic measure.
Cromwell points to me.
That's precisely why I would like to ask you to keep your werewolf identity secret from every single vampire you'll encounter until you've completed your mission.
I didn't really mind keeping my identity a secret. However, I didn't think it would be possible to keep it a secret. And I'd been about to tell Cromwell about my reservations, when...
Damian can never know you're a werewolf. You won't tell him, and you'll hide it from him and all other vampires at all cost.
And as Cromwell spoke, looking straight into my eyes, pupils expanding slightly, I'd understood too late this wasn't a request, but a command. One that seemed to imprint itself at the very center of my brain, making my wolf cower in shock. My breath froze in my lungs as I realized I'd have no choice but to comply. I wouldn't be able to tell any vampire I was a werewolf if I tried. Did you just... I'd gulped. I'd never experienced a vampire compulsion before. It was a rare but powerful gift that not all of them possessed. Unfortunately, it appeared Cromwell was remarkably gifted in the art.
I apologize, pet, but it's for the best. It'll be easier for you to execute your purpose that way.
Even if I don't tell them, won't the vampires be able to tell? I thought your kind could smell our wolves. Something glinted in Cromwell's eyes as he handed me a small flask that, until then, had been hidden inside his jacket pocket.
This potion will ensure no vampires will know about your wolf.
He had explained, handing me the goods.
You'll need to take a new one every week, which I'll ensure you'll receive. This will give us a chance to speak on your progress regularly.
And that is how I'd been compelled to keep yet another secret, piling it on top of the long list of secrets I'd already been keeping. Secret 1. I was still bonded to Nate. Secret 2. I was a werewolf. Secret 3. I'd made a wish I couldn't come back from. Cromwell pulls a dark cloak over my head as we exit the car, and he takes my hand to guide me across a large hall, up a flight of stairs. Once we've entered a small yet elegantly furnished sitting room, he tells me to wait for him there, while he's off to get his mercurial grandson and heir. I haven't had much time to check my phone that evening, and had avoided doing so even when I very well could have. I know what's awaiting me, but it still twists my heart to see Nate's name appear on my screen. He sent me over 100 texts and left me endless voice messages. My fingers itch to open them and hear my mate's voice, the very impulse bringing tears to my eyes. I'm so ashamed. I've betrayed my pack for him. I'm hiding in a den of vampires because of him. My entire life is in shambles because of our bond, and yet here I am, moved at the insistence he places in trying to reach me. Why am I like this? I bite my lip so hard it draws blood. I came here to escape, but how am I hoping to achieve that exactly? Do I really want to keep away from Nate, or am I hoping I can salvage our relationship somehow? Shame floods my very soul. If my friend Emma could read my thoughts right now, she'd be horrified at how pathetic. Wait, speaking of Emma and the pack, I scroll through the notifications on my phone and am surprised to find that while Vivian has tried to contact me about just as much as Nate, neither Emma nor my alpha has. Surely they know I'm going to be working for the vampires by now. They must be furious with me. I bite into my lip again, drawing more blood just as the door to the sitting room opens onto the silhouette of an impossibly tall man who barges into the room with little to no pretense.
Good evening, whatever your name is.
He says, sagging onto a nearby chair, though with such grace he makes it look an art form.
Shall we?
He's barefoot, I realize. My eyes travel up his long legs, and I'm surprised to find him wearing dark sweatpants and a white t-shirt that should only accentuate the pallor of his skin, except it only makes it look all the more flawless. To be fair, this man could probably be wearing a garbage bag and still put everybody else to shame.
Come,
He says, beaconing me over with a finger. But I'm too stunned to move. The thing with vampires is that they're all unfairly beautiful. What werewolves have in pure strength, they compensate with allure, their charm being essential to lure in their preys. Which explains their flawless features, graceful movements, and enthralling voices. So I was obviously expecting Cromwell's grandson to be gorgeous. But this is just...
Are you deaf?
Damian mocks, though it just feels like he gave me the world's best compliment because I'm blushing all over. I'd never seen someone so beautiful in my entire life, and I'm using all my energy not to gape. Framed with wavy black hair, his features bear a delicacy that would have felt feminine if it weren't for their sharpness. Added to an eerie, apathetic blue gaze, his presence is as threatening as it is appealing, the odd, exquisite contrast disturbing. I'm captivated by the curve of his long eyelashes against his high cheekbones, but it's his scent that truly steals my attention. A regular human would think nothing of a vampire scent, but we werewolves can smell them for what they are, decaying bodies, naturally kept alive by blood magic. And there's nothing like the lingering smell of death that sticks to them to put our wolves on edge. But Damian smells nothing of the sort. His scent is that of a forest at dawn, crisp and breathtaking, and intertwined with smokier tones, reminiscent of a distant campfire. He smells unexpectedly refreshing, freeing even. I'm sorry? You were saying? I ask, feeling myself blush furiously. I feel ridiculously underwhelming next to him. It doesn't help that he is staring at me like I'm no better than the scrape of his shoes. He gets back up and in one swift movement comes to tower over me.
I'll be sampling you.
He explains, raising my chin up with his index finger, surprisingly gentle. I shiver at his touch, and not only because it is cold. Me? I ask, mine just a little bit muddled. Damian's eyes are dark and pronounced blue, though there's a certain warmth to the usual cold tone.
Your blood.
He explains, though I've lost track of the conversation, even more so when I feel his thumb graze my lower lip.
This will do.
Damian says, drying some of the blood that had flooded my skin with his finger, slowly bringing it to his own lips. I briefly wonder if letting him drink my blood will result in a diplomatic incident between our kinds. My throat goes dry as I watch him lick his finger. It feels so intimate to see him do so. It isn't, though. Not really, but Damian's pupils dilate and his eyes snap to my mouth upon tasting my blood. I feel locked into place. Is it okay? I ask, feeling particularly self-conscious. Damian doesn't respond right away. Instead, he briefly hesitates, before lowering his mouth slowly against mine, and for the barest moment, I wonder if he's going to kiss me. Instead, he barely grazes my lip, and then gives it a small lip. We're not even properly touching, and yet my pulse is wild long after he's pulled away. Our eyes meet. His are impenetrable.
I see you've made Chloe's acquaintance then.
Cromwell's voice booms into the room and I jump away from Damian, heat rising to my cheeks, like we've just been caught in some illicit act. Damian sinks back into his chair, folding his arms. He doesn't look nearly as flustered as I must, which is to say, he doesn't look flustered at all.
Yep, sampled her, don't want her.
He smirks a shit-eating grin at his grandfather before waving at the door with his hand.
Off you go then.
He tells me in a bored tone.
Thank you, but no thank you.
I'm too stunned to feel the humiliation. It'll come to me later.
Oh, Damian, I don't think I've made myself clear earlier.
Cromwell says, sounding only vaguely apologetic.
You seem to be under the misconception that Chloe is here as a potential bride.
At the words, Damian frowns slightly.
Isn't she?
Of course not. You've made it very clear to us on multiple occasions that you didn't want a bride.
And you made it very clear on every single one of these occasions, you didn't give a shit about what I wanted or not.
Damian replies, raising an eyebrow.
I'm on your side.
Cromwell says, more sincerely.
I told your mother if you didn't want to take a bride, then we shouldn't push the issue. She'll come around, but you know how she is.
Evil?
Damian deadpans, making Cromwell smirk.
Overbearing.
He rectifies before giving me a glance.
I do hope you haven't scared Chloe away. I assured her you wouldn't drink from her. Though, don't worry, my dear.
He tells me.
I can assure you Damian won't be doing it again. He definitely doesn't look like he enjoyed tasting you. Right, Damian?
His grandson doesn't reply immediately.
If she isn't here for the bridal position, then what is she here for?
He asks. Cromwell clasps his hands in an almost childish-like excitement.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, son. Chloe here will be acting as your new bodyguard.
A heavy silence descends upon the room, one that Damian eventually breaks with a genuine laugh.
That little thing?
He says, grinning because I think he sincerely believes it is a joke.
Oh well, looks like I'm saved then. Really, I feel like I can breathe again.
Then, seeing his grandfather's serious expression unchanged, he asks, sounding unsure.
Wait, this is a joke, right?
I'm afraid not.
Cromwell replies, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
Trust me, Chloe has been well trained. I have complete trust in her ability to guard you. I've already explained to you how important you are to our family, Damian. You are my heir. Your potential is our most precious gift. When I pick someone to look after you, it's with utmost care.
I flush, though not from Cromwell's words. Although it makes me feel better hearing that trust is placed in me for once, it's Damian's assessing expression which truly holds my attention.
Does she pack a magical punch or something?
He asks.
Something like that.
Cromwell smiles confidently.
Though this is all she and I will say on the matter. For your safety, Chloe will be working undercover. This will give her an edge over our enemies.
Yeah, sounds like a bulletproof plan.
Damian deadpans.
Except how are we going to explain why a random human follows me around everywhere, if no one is to know she's my bodyguard?
I finally avert my eyes from his near-perfect face to turn to his grandfather, too. That's a rather good question, actually.
Chloe will be posing as your bride.
His grandfather exclaims, clearly very happy with the idea.
Don't look at me like that. You yourself assumed that's what she was when she arrived. Everyone, including your own mother, expects you to pick a bride any day now, yet you hate the idea. This is the perfect cover-up, and it will get everyone off your back on the matter.
I pale. I had no idea this was part of his plan. Excuse me? I ask, in a small voice I sure hope doesn't too audibly tremble. What does it mean exactly? Are we going to have to—
Act the part, absolutely.
Cromwell grins. I throw Damian a nervous look. He seems very amused. Act like we're engaged? I squeak.
Oh no, darling.
Damian smirks.
You're going to act like you worship the ground I walk on, and I'll be treating you like a cheap whore. It'll be fun.
I tense at his harsh words, sending his grandfather a distressed look. He smiles, soothingly.
Don't worry, Chloe. I'll have someone come over first thing tomorrow to begin your education before you're taken to court. You'll see. You'll be acting like the perfect bride in no time. Though, of course, it'll only be an act. Damian will never actually drink your blood. I guarantee it.
7. Present day at the ball. Damian pulls me towards him, as if shielding me from view will make his mother forget about her latest great idea, namely that he drinks my blood in front of an entire crowd of expectant vampires for entertainment. I glance around the ballroom, hoping Ian Cromwell will appear to get us out of this predicament, but quickly have to resolve myself to the idea that he simply isn't in attendance this evening.
What is it, Damian?
Alexandra asks.
I thought this girl was your bride-to-be?
Exactly. To be.
Damian gives his mother an innocent look.
I haven't committed to her yet. If you insist I drink from someone, I'd rather it be Gemma.
Gemma?
His mother barely even flinches at the words, maintaining composure superbly.
Your uncle is thinking of making her his bride.
I know.
Damian wiggles his eyebrows.
He's going to hate it.
Alexandra sighs and waves her hand at someone, beaconing them over.
Gemma, darling, come here.
An exquisite young woman with warm brown curls and a golden complexion quickly makes her way to us.
My lady.
She bows, gracefully to Alexandra, and then to Damian.
My prince.
I'm awed by her graceful expertise. I don't think I'll be curtsying like that anytime soon.
Damian needs to feed,
Alexandra says, leading Gemma closer to him by the hand.
Will you help him, please, love?
Gemma inclines her head, reminding me of a delicate dove. How can a human be so poised?
It would be my honor, my lady.
Alexandra gives Damian a hardened stare.
Well, what are you waiting for, darling? You said your bride-to-be wasn't fully recovered from your previous session just yet. Chloe won't mind. Right, Chloe?
It takes me a second to realize Damian's mother has finally deigned to acknowledge my presence. Oh no, of course not, I reply, attempting not to sag my shoulders in relief. Damian takes Gemma's hand in his eyes, making a show of kissing it.
Hello there.
He pulls her after him, and it takes me a second to remember I should probably follow.
You want to watch, Munchkin?
Damian asks me before winking at Gemma.
She's kinky like that.
He explains, making me feel oddly self-conscious. I'm sure he knows I'm only following to ensure his safety, but he's making it sound like I'm some voyeur. My awkwardness only grows when, after Damian's led us into a small, private living space and closed the door behind, I realize I'm going to have to witness him drink from an innocent girl. I gulp, staring furiously at the fire burning in the chimney, the small couch laid in front of it, the tall glass windows and the creamy rug at my feet, everywhere but at Damian or Gemma.
Where would you like to drink from, my prince?
Gemma asks Damian, batting her eyelashes. The girl looks perfectly composed, though her eyes betray an excitement I'm stunned to witness. I knew vampire brides accepted their positions willingly, but I thought it was the money that attracted them, not the prospect of actually being bitten.
Wherever you like, darling.
He replies, looking positively unmoved.
Shall I remove my dress, then?
Gemma asks, coyly. I gulp, loud enough that it reminds Damian of my presence.
That won't be necessary.
He tells the girl, amused.
My bride-to-be is very possessive of me, you see.
I do my best not to roll my eyes while Gemma sends me a pitying glance.
Would she like to join in?
She then asks, smiling invitingly. I kind of wish for the ground to swallow me whole. Damian, meanwhile, looks like the cat who ate the cream.
Would you care to join us, my darling?
He asks me, voice full of mock concern. It takes me far too long to realize he actually expects me to answer the question. No, thank you, I mutter, averting my gaze. Damian shrugs, sending Gemma an apologetic glance.
She doesn't like to share,
He tells her, taking her wrist in his hand. His fingers trace the veins that run like delicate streams under her skin, a slightly hesitant look in his eyes.
Please, don't hold yourself back, my prince.
Gemma encourages, gently raising her wrist to Damian's lips. My breath catches when he lowers his head, his lips parting to reveal the sharp elegance of his fangs. As he is about to bite into the skin, he raises his eyes towards me, holding my gaze like he wants to make sure I'm watching the entire thing. He's probably hoping to make me feel uncomfortable, I remind myself, feeling my heartbeat picking furiously. I'm not sure if that is out of fear or anticipation or something else. Probably a mix of many feelings I don't linger on as Damian suddenly bites into the girl's flesh with crushing force, making her gasp. I watch, transfixed, as Gemma's initial shock gives way to a sigh of contentment. Damian's eyes close for the briefest second, savoring the rush of life flowing into him. He obviously likes drinking that girl's blood, I think to myself, rather dumbly because of course he does. He's a vampire. The room becomes silent save for the sound of the fire and Gemma's panting breaths. I feel like the intruder I am, especially when she begins to sway, and Damian swiftly puts an arm around her, holding her upright with effortless strength. His gaze is focused on her face now. He's watching her reactions oddly intensely, like he is calculating each sip of blood with care. Yet there's a tension in his jaw, his restraint almost painfully palpable. Meanwhile, tears have begun to form at the corner of Gemma's eyes. Is she in pain? It doesn't sound like she is. In fact, one would think she's rather enjoying the moment with the obscene way she's moaning. I'm furiously flushed. Damian releases her wrist and puts an arm under Gemma's knees, carrying her over to the nearby couch like she weighs nothing.
You barely took anything.
She slurs, voice faint amongst the shuffle of her silk dress. Damian gently lays her down, avoiding her pleading gaze, though his hand remains hesitantly on her cheek. He looks pained.
More,
the girl begs with a sob. She reaches her fingers towards Damian, making me gasp. His darkening eyes snap towards me, and for the first time since I've met him, he looks very much like the apex predator I forget he is, his control warring with the primal part of him that's been aroused by Gemma's plea. He looks ready to pounce as his eyes travel down the girl's long neck with calculated precision. I think of interposing. Gemma seems to be enjoying herself, but also pretty out of it. Should I say something? Something holds me back. Fear, maybe, of being next? With unprecedented speed, Damian leans down again and bites the flesh, his eyes rolling back when he tastes his victim's blood once more. I try not to think about how much it makes him look like an addict getting his fix, distracted, with the way Gemma arches under him. I feel too warm and slightly breathless, disturbed and yet... I gulp, trying and failing to avert my eyes when a pleasant burn arises within me. My wolf seems to enjoy the show, the brutality and primality of it pleasing it immensely. Though that certainly has nothing to do with me, I tell myself a little desperately, eyes glued to Damian's pleasured frown. Gemma's eyes glaze over, her body relaxing completely as she drifts into unconsciousness. Damian probably feels it because he abruptly moves away. His eyes meet mine across the room, and for a brief moment, a flicker of something closely resembling shame reflects in them. I tell myself it's simply my imagination as he wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. Yet, I can't help but feel fascinated by the warm, pink glow of his cheeks, nor the way he distractedly licks his lips. My own heart a confusing blend of repulsion and undeniable draw. I think there's something seriously wrong with me. 8. Present day. Later, after I've retreated to my room for the night, or rather a quick nap in the very early hours of the morning, I'm rudely awakened by the vibrations of my phone, half asleep, I don't think, before answering the call mechanically.
Where the fuck are you?
Nate's voice booms across the line, making my eyes snap open in shock. I'm such an idiot. Why did I answer my phone without checking caller ID? My heart begins to pound against my ribcage in terror. He is going to want to know where I am. He's going to want me to come back to him. He's going to...
Are you cheating on me?
Nate barks, bringing tears to my eyes. He sounds the way he does when he's about to do something awful, something my mind always tries to bury deep within my memories after the moment has passed, because it's too painful to bear. Nate sounded like this when he'd conspired to kill my alpha and his mate. And he sounded like this in the future I'd seen when I'd made my wish. Of course not. I tell him, in the most soothing, loving tone I can manage. How could you even ask me that?
I felt your desire through our bond earlier.
Nate sneers.
It was practically dripping with it. Don't lie to me. Who were you with?
A flash of Damian's blissed expression as he sank his teeth into Gemma's body flashes before my eyes, and for some reason, the next image that comes to my mind is one of him biting me instead. Baby, I tell Nate in the sultry, soothing tone I know he loves. I was missing you, that's all. Thinking of you and what you'd do to me when we'd be together again. This seems to appease Nate, if only slightly, though the same can't be said about me, who's feeling very eager for a cold shower.
Then come home.
Nate begs, practically begging into the phone. I can't. I bite my lip in the hopes that it will shock me out of the disturbing state of arousal I've condemned myself to, ever since picturing Damian's fangs sinking into my flesh. I'm on an important mission, for the pack.
Is that so?
Nate sounds like he's smirking. He can probably feel my desire and, thankfully, is attributing it to me being on the phone with him. I have to go. I lie. There's a knock on my door.
Wait a minute.
Speak soon, I tell him before hanging up. I toss the phone across my room and bury my face in my hands. I'm going to have to come up with a better excuse. In fact, I'm going to have to come up with a much better plan in general if I'm going to escape my mate for good. Hiding amongst the vampires is only delaying my problem. The future doesn't lie, and I've seen mine, one I cannot escape. I can't just reject my bond to Nate, as logic would dictate. Rejecting our bond is what always ends up dooming me. I can't ask my pack for help. I just don't see how I can escape my own future. It's going to take a miracle to change it. A tumult of emotions swirls within me. Stress, confusion, fear, and still. This troubling desire I can't seem to extinguish. My skin feels too tight around me, and I realize I need to turn. My wolf is clawing its way out, desperate for a bit of respite. I breathe in, deeply, to buy myself some time. I can't turn inside the house, it's too risky. Luckily, it's built on large grounds. If I retreat far enough from the main property, I can probably manage a quick turn without being caught. Just like I did at home when wanting to escape to see Nate, I jump out of my bedroom window, landing easily 3 floors down below without making any noise. Then, I sprint behind the trees at the far end of the garden, grateful for the semblance of woods. It's not very big and I won't be able to run very far, but it will do. I rid myself of my clothes, hiding them well inside a bush, and drop to my knees, bracing myself for what's to come. A turn is never pleasant. My wolf must literally crawl out from inside me, breaking my flesh and bones, slowly, as it does. But it is well worth it, once it finally takes over. The flesh I'd shed quickly decomposes, and once it has, I let my wolf fully take command, surrendering to it as it begins to run around this small haven, though making sure it keeps quiet. It wouldn't do us any good if it were to howl right now. My wolf picks up on varied scents which intrigue it in their novelty, but one in particular quickly calls to it. The fresh, alluring scent of crisp dawn, which my wolf is quick to chase after. It only occurs to me, too late, that I've sensed it before, in my human form. Deep inside a clearing, sitting on a fallen trunk with a bottle of liquor in hand, is Damian, whose blue eyes immediately snap up as I approach, widening slightly as he takes in my wolf's presence.
What the?
He says, surprise quickly giving way to curiosity.
Hello there, gorgeous.
Personally, I think we're doomed. But my wolf, on the other hand, is very pleased to see him. Part 2. 9. Present day, right after my wolf encounters Damian. I'm begging my wolf not to engage, nor approach, but my efforts are in vain. It finds Damian's scent much too appealing to resist, notably because it remembers the brutality he'd displayed earlier, drinking that girl's blood. My wolf had enjoyed recognizing another predator at work, one it admired, yet didn't feel threatened by. I find it particularly idiotic on its part, but I'm not the one leading the charge at the moment. Damian is a threat. One would be a fool not to see it. The way his blue eyes remain glued to my wolf, his body still ready to attack, is proof enough of that. I wasn't expecting him to extend his wrist over to us, though, in an obvious invitation to scent and mark him. That's surprising for someone who doesn't ever interact with wolves. It's like he instinctively knows what to do, the best way to make contact. My wolf leaps at the opportunity, briefly smelling the skin before nuzzling it. It takes its time with it, too, though Damian remains perfectly still during the whole process. It probably helps that he doesn't need to breathe.
Where do you come from?
He asks, eventually, body unmoving still. My wolf moves away, not very far, settling by Damian's side. Apparently, he manages to keep it still better than I can.
It must be nice being a wolf.
Damian observes after a while.
Freeing.
My beast huffs in agreement. I personally wonder if that means Damian feels trapped, and if so, by what exactly? His very nature and desire for blood? His obligations to his family? Something else?
Have you ever killed?
He abruptly asks, eyes lost in space. My wolf hasn't, not even easy prey like birds or squirrels like most pups in the pack. It's done much worse, I reminded it, Evie's face in mind. My wolf sighs in frustration and lowers its head to the ground.
Not sure if that's a no or a yes.
Damian sighs.
I've died before. It didn't feel nearly as bad as I thought it would. So maybe it's all right to kill. Everyone must die one day or another.
I'm glad my wolf is the one in control at the moment. I don't know how I'd reacted if it was me Damian was saying this to. I know what death feels like. And I'd forgotten, somehow, amongst all the things I had learned about him the last few days, that perhaps the most important one was that Damian did too.
I can't believe I'm talking to a wolf,
he says, closing his eyes. I can't believe it either, to be honest. In the days following my encounter with Damian in the woods, I often catch myself wondering how Damian died. How did he become a vampire? Vampirism is genetic. One either has the gene, the unlocked potential to become one, or he doesn't. Born human, they're reborn undead and need blood to survive, but only if death claims them too soon. So what was it that killed Damian? Some freak accident? A disease? Murder? Trailing after him in an endless string of parties and dinners, watching him flirt and mingle amongst his kind like he'd always been there, I'm tempted to assume. But the fact is that, for all that I wish I did, I do not know. He enjoys getting a rise out of people, irreverence practically his middle name. And he also sits quietly in the woods behind his elegant mansion in the early hours of the morning, waiting for my wolf. The more I get to know him, the less I understand him. When we're with others, he bombards me with sarcasm-induced flirting that aims to mock rather than seduce me, like he'd ever want to seduce me. When we're alone, and under no obligation to perform any act of closeness, he tends to avoid me like the plague. In short, Damian doesn't trust me, And while I don't think I trust him either, there's now a kind of inexorable fascination that wasn't there before when I look at him. I don't know what to make of it. I'm not one to pry, but I've been tasked with protecting him. The more I can find out about him, the better, surely. What if the answer to the question of who's trying to kill him lies in his past? Your grandfather said you'd been attacked twice. Could you tell me how and when? I ask, one evening during dinner. We're being forced to dine together, staring at each other on the opposite ends of the longest dinner table ever made practically every night, so as to avoid stirring up any questions amongst the staff. Staff tended to gossip, after all. Though our meal has been set up in a beautiful room that resembles more a library than a dining room. Endless shelves filled with multicolored books cover walls that seem to stretch towards the sky itself, with how tall the ceiling is.
Tell you about the attacks? Boring.
Damian replies, getting up to glance at a nearby shelf and toying with a book.
I'd hate for you to become even gloomier, Munchkin.
I scoff at the nickname. He's given me plenty, but that one seems to stick. Probably because Damian can tell it's the one which annoys me the most. It's exhausting how quickly his mood shifts. Even more, when I'm treated to an entirely new dimension to his personality at night, when I hang out with him in my wolf form. One that's quiet, melancholic, and considerate. Right now, though, he's being every bit the petulant playboy he prefers to show the world. Worrying about your well-being is what I'm here for. I remind him patiently, making him snap his eyes towards me, expression so dubious my heart freezes.
Is it?
He asks, challengingly, though not unkindly. Caught in that impenetrable stare, all my answers fall short and silence stretches for much too long to be believable when I finally manage a choked, "Yes?" Damian continues to stare at me like he's still expecting an answer, or rather trying to deduce it. His gaze giving me the impression that he can see right into my soul. The impossible notion that he knows erupts in my mind. He can't know, and yet, it feels like he does. Like he knows everything. Namely, that I'm not here to protect him. Although I do intend to try, but to hide. To protect myself. As quickly as the thought erupts inside my head, I let it go. How could he know? If anything, he suspects something's up, but it's not like he can deduce my life story at a glance, and we've met not even a week ago.
You're a terrible liar. Anyone ever tell you that?
Damian laughs, though it's not a joyful laugh. I wince, panic creeping up my spine. What if he begins to suspect me of something much worse than wanting to protect myself? What if he starts seeing me as a possible threat, due to my reservations? This seems more likely, the more my silence stretches.
Tell you what.
Damian crossed his fingers to rest his chin on top of them.
You tell me why you accepted my grandfather's offer, and I'll tell you how I almost died. Again.
I open my mouth on instinct, the truth ready to spill from my lips. But Ian Cromwell's compulsion twists around my mind, and my lips close tight against my will, something that doesn't escape Damian's notice. Stupid compulsion. What was Ian Cromwell thinking, prohibiting me from telling his grandson about my werewolf identity? Next time I'll see him, I'll ask him to reconsider. If I'm going to protect Damian effectively, I need him to trust me. I need the money, that's all. I attempt to explain, in a weak voice.
Forget it.
Damian interrupts, looking disinterested once more. Feeling strangely guilty, I avoid his gaze to stare at the nearest row of books near me. I take one without thinking, eyeing it distractedly.
The Beast Within?
Damian says, amused.
I didn't know you liked French literature.
I'm confused, and it shows.
Your book?
Damian says, pointing towards the one I'm holding in my hand. You've read it? I ask, surprised.
Had to. It's pretty good. It's about a man who feels the need to kill all the women he desires.
An involuntary grimace twists my lips as Nate's picture comes to my mind.
Maybe not the right pick for you.
Damian says, taking the book from my hands. He briefly glances at the shelves, shakes his head, then moves a little further down the room to pick a more modern-looking book from the shelf, handing it to me.
This one.
He says.
You'll love it.
I glance at the book to read its title. The Time Traveler's Wife? I ask, surprised. I've never read it, though I've heard of it and always wanted to. I'm surprised Damian would pick it for me, though. You like romance novels? I ask, with a laugh. Damian smiles. It's a private smile, one that seems reserved only for me, though not deprived of teasing.
I do. With the right novel.
He says, making my breath catch for some reason. Maybe because he's looking at me so intently. It's not a searching gaze exactly, more expecting. I pull the book a little closer to my chest. I don't know what he expects from me, but I find myself wishing to give it to him nonetheless. Though, I can't help but be a little saddened by the prospect that it would eventually only disappoint him. I want to tell him someone so beautiful as him shouldn't waste his time looking and expecting things from someone like me. Damian frowns as if he's heard the thought.
Your phone keeps ringing.
He says.
You might want to get it. Seems urgent.
I realize this is true. I'd been so preoccupied with our conversation I hadn't realized. It's probably Nate calling. If it's not, it's someone from the pack. Or Damian's grandfather. In any case, it isn't a call I can just take in front of Damian. You can't think of any reason why anyone would want to kill you? I ask him, changing the subject.
So we're on that again, then?
Come on, Damian. This is important. You really can't think of anything?
Did I say that?
He smiles brightly.
I can think of plenty of reasons why someone might want me dead, and plenty of people who do. My mother, for instance.
Your mother? I ask, trying to gauge whether he is being serious. It's impossible to tell judging by Damian's expression. From what I've seen, his relationship with his mother is indeed tense. But to the point where she'd want to kill him? Then again, Damian Cromwell hadn't trusted her with my secret. Namely, how I'm not a bride, but a bodyguard to Damian. Could this be a sign that he doesn't fully trust her?
Amongst others.
Damian replies with a shrug.
Vampires spend most of their time trying to kill each other. Could be any of them, really.
Damian words from the night before echo back into my ears. Maybe it's all right to kill. Everyone must die one day or another. Could he have meant that he'd have to kill another vampire to save his own life?
Or perhaps another type of enemy. I hear the werewolves are pretty angry with us. Maybe they'd want revenge.
I do my best to hide a frown. A werewolf going after Damian? If that is the case, it's certainly not one from my pack. This discussion is raising more questions than bringing answers. But before I can ask Damian to elaborate on anything, a butler shows a beautiful young woman inside the dining room, draped in an elegant black dress. Damian clasps his hands together in a way that reminds me of his grandfather.
My dessert is here.
He announces with a wink that leaves me dumbfounded.
If you'll excuse me.
A silly sense of disappointment makes my heart sink as I watch him greet his guest, offering her his hand. She's probably here to feed him. I'm shocked to realize the thought sincerely bothers me. Why does it? Because I'm worried about the girl? Disgusted at the prospect of her ending up like Gemma had that night? Gemma's pleasured sighs echo in my ears, and I grind my teeth. No, it isn't that. Though, I don't even want to consider the alternative. Me, a wolf, wanting to give a vampire her blood? That's ridiculous. No, if anything, I'm simply disappointed that Damian is ditching me for some random girl. I can admit I appreciate his company sometimes when he isn't being an ass. I'm still holding the book he gave me earlier. I guess I'll be reading this in bed tonight, while Damian is busy doing God knows what with his...
Unless you'd like to watch me again, Chloe?
He asks suddenly from across the room.
You seemed to rather enjoy it the last time.
I fumble for words, cheeks reddening at an alarming rate. I didn't, I protest, Not at all. But Damian's already turned back around and I'm left staring at his back.
Maybe next time,
he says. And then he exits the room. Inside the pocket of my jeans, my phone begins to ring again, twisting my heart. Can I get away with ignoring my mate again tonight? Probably not. I can't avoid him forever. The remainder makes my stomach sink. I catch myself wishing Damian would return to take my mind off it. I'd much rather tackle his problems than my own. 10. 2 months ago, in a modest motel room on the outskirts of town, before I'd made my wish and met the Cromwells. My mate's lips travel down my body, leaving a trail of kisses along my bare skin. I messed up again, meeting him here today. Though, when was the last time I did anything right? It would probably be easier if being bad didn't feel so good. Nate's hands, gripping my hips, ground me in the moment, the type of 2 brief moments I'm always chasing after. I just want to forget for a while. Pretend we're 2 simple wolf shifters in love, blissfully happy like any fated pair should be. I want to escape this reality, in which Nate did what he did. But it isn't possible, is it? I should never have met with him today, just like I shouldn't have the day before or the one before that. I always tell myself, this time will be the last. That I can't do this anymore, I shouldn't. If any member of my pack found out about us, or worse, if my alpha found out about us, would I be banished, just like Nate has been? It would be all I deserve.
Just relax, baby.
Nate murmurs into my ear.
I got you. I'll take care of you.
I nod, tears prickling my eyes. Why do I need to hear those words so much? Why am I like this?
You know I love you, Chloe, don't you?
I nod, keeping my eyes firmly closed. If I keep them close, I can forget for a while. But when I look at him, I get these flashes, and suddenly, what he's done, the reason he was banished, is inescapable. And then, my breath catches in my throat, and...
Tell me you love me.
Nate commands, as our bodies become one once more. I love you. He frowns and grabs me by the throat. He doesn't squeeze, but the threat is there. It sends a shiver down my spine.
Now, tell me you need me.
I need you, I whisper, feeling the truth behind these words. Because, of course, I need him. He's my fated mate, the one wolf I'm meant to be with forever. He and I are destined, and we're lucky enough to find each other when most wolves never find their soulmate and end up choosing their partners instead. I didn't get to choose, because one day, there he was, claiming me as his. And despite everything, I love him. I must.
You're crying.
He complains through a moan, flipping me over.
I don't like seeing you cry, baby, you know that.
I know he doesn't. He won't look at me when I do. I'd rather he didn't either. It makes it worse somehow. Nate and I met when we were both 16. I'd only just received my wolf, unlike other members of our pack who'd started to turn from as young as 5 or 6. Being a late bloomer, and not a particularly gifted wolf, if not the weakest, from our pack, although they all avoided using the word omega around me out of pity, I couldn't believe my luck. Meeting your fated mate was the stuff of legends, a monumental thing every wolf dreamed of, but very rarely ever experienced. I was the first in our pack to find her fated mates for centuries. And suddenly I wasn't danger-prone Chloe, or the Klutz. I was one half of a fated pair. Members of my pack were in awe of me. Other wolves from different packs visited us just to meet Nate and I. I was special when I'd never been special before in my life. It was an intoxicated feeling, and I wasn't the only one thinking so. Nate was so proud. Not only had he found his mate, but he'd been allowed to join our pack as a result, the most influential, powerful pack in the country. He fitted in instantly, his bright, charming personality a perfect match for our ranks. Our alpha, or rather our late alpha, though he was still alive at the time, trusted and appreciated him. These days, being finally valued by the other wolves and loved by my soulmate were the happiest ones of my life. Then, the accident with Evie happened, and it ruined everything.
Did you tell them yet?
Nate asks me with a smile. He's still basking in the afterglow. Contentment pours through our bond, clouding my mind with blind love and joy. But hearing these words, I tense up immediately. It isn't the right time, Nate, I remind him. My pack doesn't know I've rekindled my bond with him. Officially, I severed it 2 months ago and I'm supposed to stay away from him forever. If anything, they all think I'm being a pillar of strength, keeping away from my mate and surviving the separation. Breaking a mating bond is extremely difficult for us wolves, and even more so, for a fated pair. My alpha himself almost died trying, so the fact that I am managing it has everyone impressed. If only they knew the fraud that I am. Would they be surprised at my failure? Probably not.
How quickly do you think Harry will welcome me back once you tell him?
Nate asks, stroking my hair. I do my best not to let any of my emotions filter through our bond. Nate sounds so hopeful. I know he'd like nothing more than to rejoin our pack. But I also know with the utmost certainty that it'll never happen. Nate had betrayed us, unfairly challenging Harry for his position as alpha during his weakest moment. And maybe Harry could have forgiven him for it, if only for my sake. But Nate had also threatened his mate. They're so recently bonded that these days, Harry barely allows anyone to even look at Emma apart from me, her best friend. So letting Nate back in, when he expressly put her life in danger? No, this is an offense even time will never heal. But I can't tell him that. He's not ready to hear our life with the most powerful pack of the country is over. I'm afraid to make him understand. Will he love me outside this pack? Or will I lose everything? I have to go, I tell Nate, hurriedly grabbing my clothes which lay in different areas of our motel room. I'm on patrol duty tonight. Nate raises a dubious eyebrow.
Patrol? You?
I read him loud and clear. How is an Omega Wolf like me expected to keep the peace? I'm not strong enough. Vivian requested my help, I explain, avoiding Nate's eyes. I don't want to read what I already know in his gaze, that I'm incapable, and that Vivian probably requested my presence out of pity.
I thought you said there'd been a surge of vampire attacks these past few weeks.
Nate says. Yeah, hence the patrol. Disbelief and wariness surge through our bond, mixed with a tinge of incomprehensible jealousy.
Then why are you going? They're shady as hell.
Most of them aren't as strong as us, I defend, repeating the words Vivian has used to reassure me.
They can mind control you.
Nate scoffs. Not all of them can, and those who can do it to us wolf are even rarer. I'm done putting my clothes back on. I take one last look at my lover, knowing better than to reach for a kiss. That would only delay me further. I'm late, I say, hurriedly escaping our room.
I'll see you later.
I don't know, but I do. I know he'll call for me and I won't be able to resist. I'll betray everyone I love, over and over again, for this bond with him. For us. 11. Present day in a diner downtown.
How are things going, my dear?
Ian Cromwell asks, sitting in front of me at the low-end diner I was told to meet him at, all retro with its red booths and checkered floors. I can practically taste the leftover grease and coffee in the air, my wolf's nose picking up every scent.
Any luck on finding out who's trying to harm my grandson?
He says this while handing me a cup of coffee I can already tell he's poured my weekly potion into. My wolf's smell was too sharp to be deceived by the overlaying smell of coffee. None. I sigh, taking a sip. Although he believes it could be anybody. Which, in retrospect, is not a happy reality to live in. One in which you're convinced practically everyone you know wants you dead.
Anybody?
Cromwell laughs.
Oh, he's always been dramatic, that one. Takes after his mother.
She's his prime suspect, I confess a little awkwardly. I don't think he trusts anybody in his life but you. Maybe I should have kept this to myself, I realize after speaking. I don't know if this was something that Damian had told me in confidence or not. Also, Ian might take badly to someone bad-mouthing his daughter. But he laughs again, proving me wrong.
They've always butted heads, though I doubt Alexandra would do anything to harm Damian. She's quite protective of him. One might even say controlling. But she wouldn't hurt him. And besides, I wouldn't let her. Perhaps due to my old age, I take the notion of family seriously. I protect my own.
I finish my coffee, placing it on the diner table. Damian wouldn't tell me how he was attacked in the past. Would you mind sharing information with me about that? Maybe this will help me find a lead. Cromwell nods.
Yes, I should have led with that. My apologies. I was certain Damian would fill you in. I hope you won't mind me saying so, but I find you to have a very soothing aura. I'd assumed he would think so too, but it seems perhaps I was mistaken.
I think Cromwell is asking me how I'm getting along with his grandson, though he has a rather obscure way of phrasing it. Maybe because he's British? It doesn't help that he can tell I'm hiding something. That something being that I'm a werewolf. I tell Cromwell with a frown. I think it would help build some trust between us if I could tell him about that. Cromwell nods slowly. For a moment it looks like he's considering changing his mind, but then he purses his lips, shaking his head.
Damian's no fool, despite appearances. He's wondering why I chose you to protect him of all people. The fact that we haven't told him is making him suspicious.
Exactly, I exclaim, relieved he is seeing things my way. Perhaps if I could just tell him...
No.
Cromwell decides, resolved.
Damian's too brash, unpredictable. I'm worried he'd give your secret away, even unintentionally, and we can't have that. But perhaps an excuse. A cover story.
To my disappointment, he looks like he is trying to come up with one.
We could say you're a witch or part fae, a demon.
All of these things seem foreign and unlikely to me, and my grimace gives me away. Cromwell smiles indulgently.
How about we focus on making Damian trust you instead? Have you tried being more fun?
My mind goes blank. More fun? I ask dubiously. That's his big plan? That I tell Damian knock-knock jokes until he learns to rely on me?
Yes, he's quite the party animal, usually when no one's out to get him.
I sigh. I'm not a big party girl myself. The last time I went clubbing, Nate had thrown a fit and attacked my friend Emma for trying to defend me. My wince doesn't escape Cromwell's notice.
Or perhaps just wear shorter skirts. He's not a complicated man, my grandson.
He says with a laugh.
You could try seducing him. I'm sure he's attempted to flirt already.
I flush furiously, confused as to how a grandfather could ask me things like that about his own grandson. I supposed a century-old vampire who's seen it all doesn't have the same reservations as a mortal one, but nevertheless...
He has them.
The vampire smiles at me.
Obviously, I'm not telling you to do anything you don't want to, my dear, but playing along will get you a long way. Damian may not look it, but he's terribly insecure. Flatter his ego, and you'll have one foot through the door, so to speak.
You still haven't told me about the killing attempts? I redirect, feeling embarrassed this man would suggest I seduce his grandson, and even more because I'm seriously considering taking his advice.
The first one took place 6 months ago. It was so surprising. We labelled it as a freak accident at the time. Damian was out at one of these nightclubs he enjoys, like I said, party animal. Anyway, a vampire used his compulsion power on him to try and drag him away. Damian resisted, and when he confronted the vampire, the latter attacked. Someone from my security team was quickly able to extract Damian from there safely. And if that had been it, we'd have thought nothing more of it. But this is where it gets strange. When the culprit was apprehended, he convulsed and died almost immediately. We're still unsure what killed him, but at the time, we assumed the vampire who'd attacked Damian had perhaps consumed a drug that would have explained his strange behaviour and death. We let it go, but then about 1 month ago, Damian was poisoned.
Poisoned? I asked, furrowing my brows.
Yes. He complained of having a migraine, then began to convulse, similar to how his previous aggressor had before meeting his demise. Luckily, we were quick to feed him some fresh blood, and he recovered quickly. But we don't know how he ingested the poison nor what it was, only that it seemed to have similar effects, to the one which killed Damian's past aggressor.
I bite my lip. So our best lead would be to find traces of this poison. I resume.
Indeed, though I doubt whoever's behind these attacks will try the same method again. Damian knows to drink blood from the nearest source to get better. If someone attacks him and seems to convulse once apprehended, this is where your wolf power will come in handy. Try to see if you can identify the poison's smell.
Its smell? I ask, surprised. Why?
It could help us figure out what it's made of and thus trace its origins. It's one of the reasons I thought having a werewolf around would help, and precisely why I don't want anyone giving it away. Hence the secrecy with Damian. As you may have noticed, he's not the most discreet individual.
I nod pensively, thinking about the many, loud allusions Damian made in public about me being his bodyguard rather than his bride. Maybe his grandfather had a point there. How did he become a vampire? I ask before I can stop myself. I regret the words instantly. This isn't a very happy topic and is probably private. I'm expecting Cromwell to admonish me for asking, but to my surprise, he burst into laughter.
A silly incident, though no one was surprised.
He says, fondly, like this is a warm memory.
He drove his car off a cliff.
My jaw drops. What? I gasp, mind reeling from the revelation. You mean, purposely? Cromwell blinks before realization dawns on his features.
Oh, good God, no.
He exclaims, affronted.
Nothing of the sort. He was just drunk and probably on too many drugs. He'd used to consume quite a ridiculous amount when he was still a human.
This sounds rather worrying, and I'm sure my expression gives me away. But Cromwell doesn't seem to agree.
Oh, don't pout, he's not doing any now. Wouldn't have any effect anymore.
Cromwell leaves me soon after that, one of his assistants pressing him with time and to another meeting, though he assures me we'll speak more next week. I remain at the diner, considering his words. I'm so lost in thought that it takes me much too long to realize someone else has joined me at my table. A scratch of the throat enlightens me before I even notice Jake is sitting in front of me, arms crossed and looking very, very annoyed.
I don't know what the fuck it is you think you're doing,
He tells me.
but you're coming home, right now.
12. 2 weeks ago, an hour or so after we'd rescued the witch. After making me promise not to get in touch with the witch, Vivian is fully focused on the vampire situation again. She wants to tell Harry and let him decide what to do, which would be the best course of action, but we're worried about the toll it would take on his health if we were to steal his attention away from his mate at a time when he needs to focus on their bond. However, as we head inside Harry's large, isolated home, which essentially serves as our pack headquarters, our debate over the matter is interrupted.
What were you thinking?
Jake exclaims upon seeing Vivian enter the living room.
Patrolling alone when the vampire attacks are getting more and more frequent? You should have told me.
You'd know when Chloe and I went on patrols if you'd bothered reading the schedule, Jake.
You don't send me the schedule. How am I supposed to read it?
It kind of hurts to hear that in Jake's mind. Going on patrol with me kind of equates to going alone. I know he doesn't have the highest opinion of me, and I can't blame him. I consider myself lucky he doesn't straight out hates me after what I'd done to him and his father. But it still hurts, especially because, even though I was never as close to him as I was to Harry growing up, like everyone in the pack, I've always admired him.
We're wasting time arguing.
Jake is taking a long breath like he's trying to regain his cool.
Every other pack I've gotten in touch with reports an increase of vampire attacks in the area. And I'm talking nationwide. We need a plan.
My phone buzzes inside the pocket of my jacket. Nate's calling me, probably wondering why I'm not back in his motel room yet.
We have a plan, we tell Harry.
Vivian replies, crossing her arms.
Oh, right. Silly me.
Jake sneers.
I forget he magically makes problems go away with the snap of his fingers.
Guys, I interrupt in a small voice. What if we ask the witch? Vivian's eyes snap to my face.
No, we do not ask the witch for anything. We can't trust her.
I sigh and head upstairs, leaving them to make the important decisions. No one ever listens to my ideas anyway. It probably doesn't help that they're never really good. I wish I could be more helpful.
Get some rest, Chloe.
Vivian tells me as I'm climbing up the stairs.
You seem really anxious.
I try to look appreciative to hide the fresh wave of guilt I feel at that comment. I'm only anxious because Nate is anxiously tugging at our bond. But it's not like I can tell her I'm still bonded and subjected to my mate's emotions as a result. Once hidden within the confines of my room, I jump through the window and quickly cross the gardens surrounding our house to call Nate. I can't risk doing it inside. Somebody would hear.
Get your butt back here!
He snaps after one ring. I wince. Apparently, this conversation isn't going to be pleasant. I already feel my throat tightening in response. We'd had such a pleasant time together earlier at the motel. I would have loved going to bed with the memory of it, untouched by another one of Nate's outbursts. I can't make it tonight, I whisper. Things are difficult here. The vampires are attacking more and more humans.
Who cares? It doesn't concern us.
Nate, we can't just let them harm innocent humans.
Why not? We're not the ones harming them. Why should we be responsible for the fangs?
I grit my teeth at this lack of empathy. Because not only could the humans become suspicious of supernatural activity which isn't good for us, but if the vampires are becoming increasingly aggressive, who's to say they're not going to attack us next? Nate is silent at that for a moment.
I don't like this, baby,
he tells me, switching tone.
I don't like being away from you if the situation is as dangerous as you make it out to be.
I'm not in immediate danger, I protest, trying to reassure him. I didn't want to make him worry. I should have weighed my words more carefully.
You just said the vampires were a menace! Get over here. I want to see you. Keep you safe.
My heart twitches with guilt. I'm worrying him over nothing, and I can't even go to him to make him feel better. The pack might need me, I protest, weakly, with Harry not being fully recovered yet.
Is he not recovered?
Nate asks in a casual tone I don't like one bit. I shouldn't have said that. What if he tries to attack Harry again? He promised me he wouldn't, but... Stay away from him, I snap without thinking. The memory of Nate threatening to harm my alpha is still fresh in my mind, and I'm suddenly filled with shame, being on the phone with him. I'm betraying my pack, all the people I love.
I wasn't going to do anything.
Nate grumbles.
Don't you trust me?
I have to go.
Go. I told you to come here.
I can't, I declare, heart pounding against my ribcage. I feel nauseous, torn between too many conflicting emotions. Overwhelming guilt for disappointing Nate, fear at the prospect of my pack finding out about my betrayal, disgust at myself for being so weak. I've been torn ever since I'd caved and rekindled my bond with Nate, the decision and its implications slowly unraveling my mind. I'd been so hopeful about the future, blinded by my desire for things to go back to the way they'd been, for the pain of being separated from my mate to stop. And for a while, I'd been appeased at being one with him once more. But now, I feel like I'm going insane. I just wish I knew what to do. I wish there was a way for me to know if I'd made the right decision.
Hello.
A voice greets me from behind. I jump up in shock and turn around to recognize the long strawberry blonde hair and clear blue eyes of the witch we'd rescued earlier. You? I exclaim, shocked.
Don't look so surprised.
She smirks, playing with the hem of her dress.
You're the one that summoned me.
No, I didn't, I protest. I did no such thing.
You wished for something with all your heart. Your earnestness is what called me,
the witch says, giving me a cold smile.
I live to serve, after all.
She doesn't look particularly happy over the fact. You don't have to grant me a wish if you don't want to, I tell her.
You don't decide what I can or cannot do, child.
She replies, sending me a piercing gaze.
I told you I take my orders from a higher power.
I wonder who she means by that, but she doesn't give me much time to think about it.
So what will it be? What do you wish for?
I close my eyes. There are so many things I could wish for, and so many reasons why I shouldn't. But the witch is right. I earnestly yearn for something only she can give me. Can you tell me my future? I ask in a small voice. The witch smiles.
Better yet, I can show you. But the future is broad and full of possibilities. I doubt you care about where you'll be dining next week. So if there's something specific you'd like to find out, I suggest you phrase it while making your wish.
I consider her words carefully. I would like to know if I made the right decision rekindling my bond with my mate. I tell her. I want to know if we're going to be happy. And I do. At the very idea of finding out, I feel my heart in my throat, excited and frightful all at once.
All right then,
the witch says.
Repeat after me. Iris, I wish...
Iris? I ask, confused.
That's my name.
Oh, I suddenly feel terrible for not asking before.
It's all right. People generally don't. They're too busy focusing on what they desire.
She smiles curtly.
Now repeat after me. Iris, I wish to see my future with Nate from now until the day we part.
I close my eyes and take a breath. This is it. No turning back. I'm probably going to regret not wishing for something better later, but I don't care. I have to know. Iris, I wish to see my future with Nate from now until the day we part. I realize, too late, that it's strange she knows his name when I've never said it. Her eyes begin to glow. She moves her fingers into strange, intricate patterns, making glowing symbols form in the air.
As you wish,
she says. And then, everything goes black. 13. Present day, still at the diner. Jake, I murmur, unsure how I'm going to get out of this one. He's not the last pack member I want to see, but it's a close call. Jake and I have a rather difficult relationship. It didn't used to be that way. Jake was 10 years my senior, and when I grew up, I saw him as my previous alpha's son and thought of him as the future of our pack. I thought he looked like one of those heroes from the movies with his golden blonde hair and light blue eyes. He was witty and always managed to charm every single person in the room with the kind of easy charisma that couldn't be taught. So naturally, I'd shut down and go all red whenever he was in the near vicinity, a phenomenon which amused Harry to no end. At the time, he, Jake, and Vivian had formed a tight little trio I'd secretly referred to as the Holy Trinity, for I couldn't help but feel slightly envious of their superior aptitudes and good looks. Vivian was by far the most unapproachable of the three, and I never dared utter a word to her. Jake always had a kind word or joke to say, but didn't have much time for young wolves in training, and certainly not one who never showed signs of having any abilities by the time she was 14. Harry was different. He enjoyed teaching, and so was quickly given the task of helping the younger wolves train, which included me, despite me still not displaying any ability as time went by. I was ashamed and awkward, and started retreating from everybody, but Harry was always patient and encouraging, pretty much my only friend growing up. I worshipped Jake and Vivian, but I adored Harry. Did he send you? I asked Jake, lowering my eyes. Jake scoffs.
Who? The big boss? Of course not.
I frown. Is Harry so angry he doesn't even care about what happens to me? And to think he doesn't even know about Nate yet.
Kid, he didn't send me because we didn't tell him about you.
Jake explains, brows furrowed. Oh. I breathe a sigh of relief.
Which is why you need to come home before he figures out you're doing God knows what with the vamps. Can you imagine his reaction?
Jake mimics an exaggerated shudder before sending me a charming grin.
To be honest, I don't really care if he finds out. But the mere idea of our almighty Alpha learning she somehow lost his precious little protege to the vamps has Vivian crapping her pants.
Jake interrupts himself when he notices my decomposing expression.
Hey, what's with the face, kid? I'm kidding. All right? Look, Harry's not going to like that we've let you play vampire bodyguard for a few days, but he'll get over it, and Vivian will go back to being his perfect beta in no time.
You really think Harry will forgive me? I ask in a small voice.
Of course he will. He can't stay mad at this face,
he says, pointing to me with a wink. And when he notices my disbelieving expression, he adds,
Look, worst case scenario, your bestie with his mate. I'm sure she'll put in a good word.
The mention of Emma makes me feel uncomfortable all over again. For a minute there, I'd been picturing myself going home with my pack, and suddenly, there's nothing I'd like more. But the last image of Emma, the one I'd seen upon making my wish, I can't. I can't go home. Not yet. It's too dangerous. Not just for me, but for my pack. Emma especially. I won't have her be hurt because of me again. I can't come with you, Jake, I tell him. He looks perplexed, like my words haven't reached his brain yet. But then...
Don't do this to me, Chloe. If I don't bring you home...
Harry will get mad.
Forget Harry, Viv will get mad. Chloe, she's terrifying.
Jake complains, grabbing my arm. I have to do this, I reply. Everyone's always looking down on me. You should have seen Vivian when Cromwell offered me to work for him. She didn't believe in me at all. No one does after what I did. Jake's confident expression crumbles into an uncomfortable one.
What you did, Chloe, it wasn't...
I don't regret protecting you, I tell him. I'd do it again. I only regret harming Evie in the process. Jake properly deflates at the word. It's like all his charm and bravado have left his body.
You should have never been in that position,
he says. He's right. If I'd been better and stronger and trained more, if only my wolf had come to me earlier. But it hadn't. I was put into a difficult position because I was a failure. I'd been faced with an impossible choice because I was a failure. I know I shouldn't have, I tell Jake, but I was. And since then, no one trusts me. I have to do this, improve our relationship with the Vamps, and get Cromwell to get them to respect the Accords again. This is my chance, Jake. My chance for me to prove myself to everyone again and not be seen as some weak failure. It's also my chance at staying away from Nate, but I'm not telling Jake that ever.
That's not... No one sees you like this.
Jake protests, though I can tell my words are getting to him because deep down he knows I'm right. I have to do it, I tell him. And then, because I can see a last drop of hesitation in his gaze, I add, You were there that day. I did what I did for you. Now, let me do this for me. Jake's shoulders sag in defeat, his expression a mixture of frustration and something else I can't quite pinpoint.
Look, Chloe, about what happened that day.
Chloe? You? Here at this diner?
I'm so stunned at hearing Damian's voice booming in my ears that despite its familiarity, I don't immediately acknowledge his presence. Though, it is very much him who's just arrived and is strolling towards us with an overstretched grin, dressed much too fashionably for the shabby establishment we're in. It's a casual chic kind of look, but one that screams money nonetheless.
What are the chances?
Damian exclaims as he slides into our booth to sit next to me. Or rather, to glue himself to my side like he belongs there, making me blush 100 times more than I'd ever done in Jake's presence, which is something to say the least.
Were you following her?
Jake asks, surprised and a little wary. Damian flashes him a dazzling smile, though there's an undercurrent of tension underneath it.
What makes you say that?
He asks, taking a sip of my iced coffee before spitting it back out dramatically.
That's gross, Chloe.
Jake stares at his left arm, which had been resting on our table.
Did you just spit on me?
He asks Damian in disbelief.
Did I?
Damian replies, the picture of innocence. I sigh, pushing his shoulders to get him to leave the booth before things get more out of hand. Let's go home, I tell him, sending Jake an apologetic glance while handing him some money to pay for my drink. He's completely harmless, I promise.
Excuse me, but I happen to be threateningly charming.
Damian protests, batting his eyelashes at me exaggeratedly. A real menace, I tease back without thinking. Then, realizing what I just said when a pleased smile grazes Damian's lips, I scratch my throat awkwardly. If I let him see his flirting is getting to me, it's only going to encourage him, and then I don't know what will become of my poor heart. So I hurry us out, giving Jake a little wave as we pass the front door. "See you soon," I tell him, hoping he'll take this as the indication it is to not follow after us.
Bye, Drake.
I literally just said his name was Jake. I snap at Damian.
Yeah, I wasn't listening.
Damian wraps his arm around my shoulder as he guides me towards his car. I'm about to climb inside the vehicle when I spot him across the street, watching me from behind a newsstand. Nate's here, and he looks absolutely furious. 14, 2 weeks ago, right after I made my wish, the forest dissolves around me and I find myself in a long hallway full of closed doors.
Behind each one is a part of your future.
Iris's voice echoes into my ear. I feel disoriented. Without a thought, I open the first door within reach, and I find myself back into Nate's motel room. He's there holding me in his arms. Except it isn't me. It's another Chloe. A Chloe from the future. I'm looking at the scene unfold from the outside. Neither my double nor Nate seem to register my presence.
"It's going to be all right, baby,"
He's saying soothingly. No, it isn't. My double sobs into his neck. Harry says I have to choose, you or the pack. My heart sinks upon hearing this. This means, in the future, my alpha finds out about Nate. And just as I'd suspected, he refuses to let my mate back into the pack.
"You can make him change his mind. He adores you."
Nate says with a strange expression on his face. My double doesn't notice. He adores Emma more. She protests. He won't let you near her.
"Then it's simple. We get rid of Emma."
Both me and my double recoil at the words. How could you say that? I hear my voice protest. Harming Emma? Never. You hear me, Nate. Never.
"You said because of her we can't be part of the pack. Do you want to lose your family?"
I can't listen to this. It feels like I've been stabbed in the stomach. I stumble out of the room, panting with labored breaths. Dumbly, I open another door. We can make our own pack, my double is telling Nate, looking sad yet somewhat hopeful.
"Our own pack? Don't be ridiculous. We deserve better than that."
I'd be content being only with you.
"Well, I wouldn't."
I flee out of the room, tears forming at the corner of my eyes. It hurts too much hearing this. The worst part is that I think I always knew, deep down, that while he was far more than enough for me, I wasn't enough for Nate. I'm not good enough. Not for him, not for my pack, not for anyone. For some reason, I open another door. And another. It's only heartbreak after heartbreak. Sadness and despair paving the way to the bleakest future I could have hoped for. But just as I'm convinced it cannot get any worse, I pass through a new door and...
Stay away from Chloe.
Emma's voice erupts into the room, light blinding me before I can see her.
"You leave us alone. She wants nothing to do with you."
Yes, she does. She wants to go home and you won't let her. You're ruining her life.
I blink through the tears. Emma is standing before Nate, clenching her fists. For some reason, she's in the motel room with us. My double is crouched in a corner, holding her bleeding nose.
"Get out!"
Nate yells, raising his hands. He slaps Emma so hard she falls to the ground. Only when her hands grasp at her stomach do I realize she's pregnant. I scream in horror. So does my double. I, Chloe, reject you as my mate. I hear her cry out through the tears as she crawls hurriedly towards Emma, who seems to be unconscious. Nate screams in rage and surges towards my double, encircling her neck with his hands. I watch, helplessly, as he chokes the life out of her. Out of me, a crazed expression on his face. I run out of the room with a scream. In the next one, Nate stabs me after I reject him, and in the next, he crashes our car after yet another rejection. I watch myself reject my mate and die in the process over 20 times, each one more horrifying than the next. This isn't real. It's not happening, I tell myself, crunching on the hallway floor and hugging my knees.
It's very real.
The witch's voice echoes into my ears.
There's an infinite number of futures, but in each one, Nate will drive you to reject your bond. And when you do, he kills you. It doesn't matter if it's next week or next month, it is unavoidable. You'll die at the hands of this man you love within a year at most.
I gasp in horror, feeling Iris's words surge through my very soul like a wound splitting open. I know she isn't lying. I can feel the truth lacing her words. I've seen the truth for myself. I have 1 year left at most, and then I'll be dead. 15. Present day outside the diner, right after I see Nate. The sun is set behind the city landscape. The air is warm, concrete still radiating some of the heat it has accumulated from being in the sun all day. It probably isn't, but my surroundings suddenly feel scorching and stiffening under my terror and shame. Terror at seeing Nate so close, looking like he's inches away from walking over to us to drag me away from Damian's side. But shame at being pulled by his presence despite it all, beaconed by the familiarity of his gaze. Contradictory impulses pull at me from different sides. I feel torn and unable to make a decision. Looking at Nate is like watching death straight in the eyes. Oh God, and Jake is still inside the diner. He'd see Nate, should he come closer. How long would it take for him to figure out we're still bonded? How long till I'm then kicked out of my pack? A terrible prospect, though, still better than its alternative. Emma coming to my rescue and getting killed in the process. What am I going to do? How am I going to get rid of him? Maybe if we hurry inside his car, Damian can drive us out of there fast enough?
Oh no!
Damian suddenly sighs, making me jump. As he spotted Nate? I feel silly for thinking this almost immediately. He doesn't know Nate. Even if he did see him, Damian wouldn't think anything of it. What is it? I ask.
I forgot my wallet inside the diner.
Damian says, making a show out of searching his empty pockets. My gaze travels back to Nate, who looks seconds away from heading over. The stress is going to eat me alive.
I adore this wallet.
Damian groans dramatically.
It's one of a kind.
My gaze snaps back to him.
I can't believe I just left it there.
Damian insists.
In the diner, probably right next to your friend John, who really doesn't like me. How will I ever get it back?
Shall I go and get it for you? I ask, slightly disbelieving.
Would you?
Damian gives me a bright smile.
That would be great.
I nod, feeling dazed and incapable of phrasing a coherent protest when Nate is right there. He could come over at any given moment. Is this how I die? Is he going to kill me here? I thought I'd get to laugh with Emma one last time, maybe receive one of those paternal talks from Harry, and also at least get one kiss from... What am I thinking? I head inside the diner, hoping with all my heart that he doesn't follow me inside where Jake can see him. I find him still in our booth, looking at his phone. He hands me Damian's wallet, which he must have found after we've gone.
I considered spitting inside it,
Jake declares. Fair, I reply. I go back outside feeling like I'm heading to my execution. It's the most uncomfortable walk of my life. I feel like death is breathing down my shoulder.
My wallet!
Damian exclaims, grabbing onto his leather good with childlike glee. I barely acknowledge him, frozen in shock. Across the street by the lamppost, Nate is... Did you see a... I lick my lips, nervously glancing around. Nate is gone.
See what?
Damian asks, getting into his car. I look back inside the diner and screen the area one last time, but there's no sign of Nate. Never mind, I reply, feeling a mix of relief and unease I can't explain. It's not like Nate to give up on a confrontation. So, why did he just now? Could it mean he's planning something? 16. The morning after I met Damian. I open my eyes blearily to a lavish cream-colored bedroom I don't recognize immediately. The sun is filtering softly through the curtains, and the ceiling I'm looking at is adorned with intricate golden moldings. My gaze trails confusingly. Then, a pleasant fresh scent fills my nose, making me smile softly.
Morning, wifey.
A startled yelp escapes my lips, and I jump into a seated position, staring in shock as I realize Damian is lying beside me on my bed, fully dressed and propped up by a couple of pillows. He's staring at me with a sarcastic smirk, arms crossed. "What are you doing here?" I exclaim, briefly worrying something may have happened before I take in that we're both dressed, and that being unlikely he'd ever be interested. Of course, nothing happened.
Testing your reflexes, which suck, by the way.
Damian wiggles his eyebrows.
I've been here a good hour and you haven't even stirred.
"I was tired," I explain, lamely. I try to cover my upper body with a pillow, making Damian roll his eyes.
Well, I don't know how you're planning to keep me alive in your condition.
He says, staring at his nails.
Looks to me like you need a vacation, or am I the vacation?
He says this lightly, but I can tell he's gathering information. "I'm sure I don't look it, but I can protect you," I assure him, surprised at how resolute I feel on the matter. I didn't really come here because I wanted to look after him after all. My goal was to escape Nate, but it occurs to me that, since meeting him, I've been growing more determined to take my job seriously. His grandfather entrusted me with Damian's security, and no one has entrusted me with anything in years, if ever. I don't want to disappoint Ian Cromwell.
Look,
Damian says lightly.
You don't have to do this, all right?
And before I can protest, he adds,
Whatever made you desperate enough to accept my grandfather's offer, I'll help you deal with. And then you can be on your merry way.
His gaze is surprisingly kind, and he sounds sincere. I'm speechless. Is this guy I just met really offering to help me? He's a vampire, and pretty much royalty amongst his kind. Doesn't he have anything better to do? What's his game here?
Come on.
Damian jokes, opening his arms to me.
Tell Uncle Damian what's wrong.
My lips twitch involuntarily.
Was that an almost smile?
Damian asks, pointing to my lips.
Wow. Didn't think you had it in you. You seem to live in a perpetual state of anguish.
No, I'm not, I protest, embarrassed at being so obvious to someone who doesn't seem the type too inclined to read people. This means I must be an open book if Damian Cromwell can read me with so much ease.
You're like a rabbit caught in the headlight. What are you going to do when the car comes crashing down on me, huh? Stare?
I purse my lips. He's not trying to be kind. He's just hoping to get rid of me because he doesn't think I can help. And I can't blame him for having a sense of self-preservation. Someone's out to kill him. He probably doesn't feel safe despite all the carefree bravado. I have to reassure him. "I swear on my life that I will keep you safe," I tell him, taking his hand in mine and giving it a reassuring squeeze. He freezes, eyes wide. "Damian? I think I just broke him. Why is he looking at me like that? Is something wrong with my face?" He looks shocked, isn't the right word. Touched, maybe. But by what? Certainly not by what I said. He should be used to people serving him, shouldn't he? I'm about to say something else, but then Damian moves away so abruptly you'd think he'd just been burnt, getting up from the bed in one swift movement.
It's your funeral, I guess.
He sighs, sending me a brief glance over his shoulder.
But remember, my offer still stands. You don't have to be here. I can make your problems go away, Chloe. You only have to ask.
I don't have any problems, I tell him, suddenly finding the lie to come much more difficultly for me. In fact, I don't think it's ever been this hard to lie. Why is that? I don't know this man. There's no reason I should trust him, no matter how attractive he is. In fact, him being so attractive should probably make me wary. Vampires lure in their prey with their looks. I know that. Could Damian Cromwell be trying to make me his prey? He leaves the room, and the next time I see him, he acts like this entire conversation never happened. 17. Present day. I'm expecting Damian to drive us straight back home to the Cromwell residence after we leave the diner. But instead, he leaves the city, driving us through the nearby woods, onto a coastal road towards the north. I'm not sure where we're going, but it looks like we'll be late for dinner with his grandfather, an event during which we'll also be treated to the pleasure of Damian's mother. Cromwell wants to ensure she doesn't try to sabotage my and Damian's fake engagement somehow, so the idea is to use the opportunity for her to get to know me, or to be more specific, to approve of me.
Forget it, she'll never approve of you.
Damian says.
She hates everything I like.
Ah, so you do like me. I smile, oddly pleased. I'm sure he likes me like one does an old, familiar pair of slippers, but still, it feels rather nice to hear. Damian gives me a sideways glance. It's a rather warm glance, and it leaves me blushing. I'm expecting a sarcastic comment or a flirtatious joke to follow, but surprisingly, Damian remains silent for a while.
Have you started reading the book I recommended?
He asks after a while. I have, I reply enthusiastically. I don't know if I like it, though. I have a feeling the hero's going to die in the end. Damian grins, though it's not a very happy grin.
Well, then hopefully it won't stick.
He replies. His car stops in front of a closed, iron gate that seems to guard a large property, literally lost in the middle of nowhere. Damian rings a doorbell, announces his presence through the intercom, and then drives his car up a long, uphill alley towards a large house I can discern through the darkness and the trees. This looks like a mansion from a horror movie, I comment, though without any unease. My wolf likes how large the grounds are here, away from the city, surrounded by woods and the sea nearby.
Wait for me in the car.
Damian requests.
I won't be long.
I frown. No, I'm coming with you. I can't leave you alone.
Chloe, this house belongs to me. Everyone inside of it works for me. I'll be fine. I'll be back in 10 minutes.
I nod begrudgingly, watching him turn and be greeted out the door by two men in uniform who incline their heads upon seeing him, and then disappear inside the mansion. I wiggle nervously in my seat. I don't like this. I'm supposed to be looking after him. It's weird that he wants to go in there alone. He must be up to something. The question is, would this something put him in danger? I exit the car and begin walking around the house, trying to get a glimpse of Damian inside. There's quite a few empty, grandiosely decorated, though poorly lit rooms, sometimes a staff member or two, but no sign of him. I concentrate on trying to hear the sound of his voice from where I am.
We'll get tonight.
His voice says from somewhere upstairs. I look up to the upper floor of the house. There's a balcony I can jump onto, then I'll climb up the walls. I reach the second level of the house with surprising ease. I may be a wolf, but I'm not usually very agile, and crouch by the window pane to peek inside. Damian is standing in a sumptuous bedroom with a young woman whose face I cannot see, her back facing me. However, I notice she's wearing an elegant, albeit particularly short, red silk robe.
I'm so tired of staying here.
She's complaining.
When are we going to be able to leave, Damian?
Soon.
Damian gives her a tight smile before pulling her into his arms, holding on to her with surprising tenderness.
I'm working on it, I promise.
My foot slips, making Damian's gaze snap up towards the window, and I'm forced to jump away. Feeling embarrassed for having witnessed what was probably a private moment not meant for me to intrude on, I hurry back to the car as discreetly and hurriedly as I can, heart pounding. Who was this girl Damian was with? A girlfriend? But then, why hadn't he mentioned her? Is he hiding her in this house? She said she wanted to leave. He said he'd make it happen. When will that be? And most importantly, why does my throat feel so tight? Damian and I aren't really together. I know that. This is so stupid. I'm such an idiot. My mind reeling, I wait until Damian returns, having completely given up on the idea of tailing him more closely, assuming he'd been right when he'd said he'd be safe inside the house. My wolf feels tensed, but I ignore it, stubbornly. This turns out to be a big mistake. After another good 10 minutes, Damian finally emerges from the house, looking distractedly at his phone. I watch him, trying to read his face for information on who the girl he'd been seeing was to him exactly. This is ridiculous, because it's not like his features are going to give me an answer. I'm so distracted that I don't notice the two men abruptly coming out of the trees. When they seize Damian's arms, one of them injecting him with a syringe I'm sure can't contain anything good, it takes me much too long to jump out of the car and sprint towards them. They've already thrown Damian into a vehicle that had been hidden amongst the trees, and I watch, helpless, as they drive away right before my eyes. Thank you for watching. Click the thumbnail on your screen to watch the next part. And please consider leaving a like and subscribe to support the author if you enjoyed the story.